All right. Welcome to City Council for tonight, June 19th, 2019. We will begin with an invocation. Is there anyone here from the community or the Community Presbyterian Church? No? Okay, then we will have Councilman Adams lead us in an invocation and then the pledge led by Councilman Isom.
Our Father in heaven, we're indeed grateful this evening to be here as council and staff and members of the community. We're grateful for the blessings that we enjoy of living here in Cedar City in this great community, and for the peace and tranquility that we're able to enjoy as we look at beautiful surroundings and those things that have been built up over the years. We ask you this night that thy Spirit might be with us as we discuss these things, that we can do it in a civil manner and be able to come up with those solutions that might best benefit all of the citizens of Cedar City. We ask you to bless and watch over those who service in our fire department, our police officers and paramedics and others that take care of those needs that are so very important to the life and safety of us here in this community. We're thankful again for all that we do have and for those things that thou hast given us, for the moisture that we have received this year, and pray that we may receive that is needful to fill all our reservoirs so that we'll have plenty of water to take care of those needs as we go forward. And these favors and blessings we pray for in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Let's all please stand and pledge allegiance to our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Go to school.
Right. We also need to excuse Councilman Cousins. He will not be with us tonight, and he was going to call in, but is having some technical difficulty. So
He's only calling from the Philippines.
Yeah.
So if that can get worked out, he'll call in, and if not, then we do need to excuse him. We'll now move on to our Tom. Shh.
Sorry.
Move on to our agenda order approval. Are there any items the council would like changed from the published agenda?
Move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We will now move on to council business.
I want to acknowledge this fine artwork that we're constantly blessed with. That is something that is done by our city library. And we can be in full support of these artists. You can go to the city library homepage and you can connect and see more of what these artists have to offer. But I'm appreciative of what they do for us, and it brightens our day here. So thanks to them, and thanks to the library for doing that.
I would like to request that maybe, I see Kit's not here, so I'm not sure who, but I'll pass it on to you, Mr. Bittman, that could someone look at the stop sign on Ridge Road just before you get to Sage Drive? You're coming South Ridge, but you're heading north. That three-way stop there, not the stop sign, but the stop sign that's telling you a stop sign's coming up is like bent, just like leaning out in the street. So, speak of the devil. Maybe he just checked it.
Are you coming down?
Yeah, you're coming down. You're heading north. You're heading north.
You're
heading north.
You're
So
heading.
You're going up Sage Drive towards.
You're coming
the
down.
hill?
You're coming down Ridge Road.
That'd be south.
No.
No, you're going.
No, you've already gone over the hump. You've gone over the infamous water tower, and you're heading north.
Oh, okay.
And it's right there at that intersection where the three-way. Yeah. The stop sign, it's not the stop sign, but the sign warning of the stop sign is bent, and it's like leaning out towards the
Ryan,
street.
did you get all that? Okay, we're good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Ryan, I had a question for you too. I had a call earlier this week. Someone out by the airport on our new temporary parking lot out there. They said it's filled with prairie dogs every morning. and whatnot. I was wondering if we had contacted like the DWR or anything, see what we can do to get rid of them.
Oh, boy.
Prairie dogs.
They need me out there to help them.
Ryan Marshall, Public Works Director. We haven't made that an official parking lot, so we haven't done any pavement. We haven't put any improvements on it, so we're not required to do any filings on that. If we ever do decide to make that a permanent lot, then we'll have to go through the whole process where we have to file an intent and allow DWR to come out and do any trapping or
But we
their
can't have them
evaluation.
come and do it before it.
Really not. There's
Okay.
nothing that it's not a lot. There's nothing for it. It's a temporary. It'll be gone here in another month and a half. So there's really nothing we're required to file on that.
All righty. Thank you.
Thanks.
There's a lot of traffic out there. I've driven out several times. The airport
Yes.
parking is very full. I guess that's a good sign, right?
All right. Is there anything else? No? And I'm sure all the council is aware, but for everybody else, we did have the RAP tax meetings today. They'll make the recommendation at their meeting next week, and then it will come before council. So that will be in the next few weeks.
We'll bring them for council on July 3rd.
I won't be in late.
As always, there's a lot of very, very worthy projects and
Sorry.
not
about
enough funds to go around. The arts component had 16 applicants this year, so it was going to be a very, very tough decision for those folks.
All right. And with that, we'll move to staff comments with Mike Schertz.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Mike Schertz with the Fire Department. We're back to spread more cheer this week. As I'm sure you're aware, we're just a couple of weeks away from the 4th of July. And one of the things that goes along with the 4th of July typically is fireworks displays. And so we thought that it would be appropriate to just talk about a few things related to those items. Currently, state law allows Class C fireworks to be sold June 24th through July 25th. So beginning this coming Monday, they'll go on sale and we'll begin to see some of those items. They are legal to discharge between the hours of 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. July 2nd through July 5th, with those hours extended to midnight on the 4th of July. And then again, July 22nd through July 25th. And that's a bit of a change last year and this year. It used to be a little longer period of time, and the state rules have shortened up that time, which we're grateful for. Hours are also extended to midnight on July 24th. So along with that, we just wanted to also remind everyone of a few items that we have in city ordinance. Again, only Class C common Utah state approved fireworks are allowed to be displayed in the state of Utah. So you can't bring them here from another state and shoot them off. It is also unlawful per our ordinance to discharge any fireworks within 20 feet of a residence, dwelling, or structure. So also, as we mentioned last week, we've gotten all this nice rain and a lot of tall vegetation. And so the risk goes up that we'll have a firework impact that vegetation and create a hazardous fire for us. So along with that, last year we got into ordinance what was previously a resolution, which states that we strongly recommend that fireworks only be used in large open spaces where conditions are present to provide for fire control. And we've recommended some locations, and I'd like to list those off. The south parking lot of Cedar High School, the parking lot at the Bicentennial Softball Park, the south parking lot of Canyon View High School, the Aquatic Center parking lot, Iron Springs Elementary, and any other location that the fire department may recommend, but we recommend those locations.
Is that a total of 4 that you've recommended? I'm sorry, I didn't keep count, but
That's 5, I
5.
think. Yes. Also, one problem that we've seen in the past at all of those locations is that fireworks get discarded in the garbage cans, and then we get a garbage can fire sometime that evening. So we would just ask that all of those rules apply, buckets of water, make sure that they're extinguished, don't throw them away hot, all of those things that are on all of that packaging, all those good recommendations for the safe handling and use of those items. Really strongly caution everyone not to use fireworks, obviously, next to the big grassy fields and covered lots. And again, it is unlawful to discharge those within 20 feet of a dwelling or a structure. So we're just asking, I think, for maybe an extra measure of caution based on conditions. We do anticipate, and looking ahead a couple of weeks, that we're going to see some drying, and that has the potential to create some hazardous conditions. That's
Do you
all.
know if the police department patrols those 5 areas?
Yes.
Okay, because earlier this week I had a citizen ask me, can't we have more police presence, because they think it gets a little bit out of control when we've got everybody consolidated into those 5 areas. So that even just driving down the street kind of helps. So thank you.
We also send some units out that evening to patrol and try to jump on things quick and just extinguish those trash cans, for example, as they burn. So
I'm hoping that we have a social media presence on this and can share all the same information through your Facebook page and perhaps the city police departments as well. So as much information is out there, because I think you're correct that these tall grasses are starting to dry out.
Yep.
Already.
Yes. So the state fire marshal's webpage is a good resource. There's a lot of good information there as far as the state rules, laws, and regulations. And then we've got some stuff on our page as well. So
Thank you.
thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mike.
Other mic. Fireworks.
Do you have any more mics in the fire department that can come tonight?
There are several.
6
I was
mics,
gonna say,
and I'm
you
Mike
can just go
Phillips,
in
the
and
fire
get a
chief,
mic.
before the mayor gets me. So we had an unfortunate event at the SUU at this opening ceremonies of the summer games. That fireworks show was done by a contractor for the summer games. We were there for standby only for that incident. Chief Shirts met with him and talked about the NFPA code that covers fireworks, and they met the standard for that. It was just a unfortunate accident. There's been lots of rumors going through towns that it was on purpose. It was not. I had the ATF call me and ask me that. So
If it was on purpose?
yeah,
Wow.
People
Were
like to
they-
start rumors?
yes.
And your show?
And our show meets the standards. We have to have, it's basically 70 feet for every inch of shell. So for our show, we shoot 12-inch shells. Those that have gone out there, seen those basketballs we shoot up in the sky. We need 840 feet. Our show boundaries has 1,100 feet to the west and 1,000 feet to the north. So we meet that. Also, our show, we don't have the shells or the tubes that are larger than 6 inches are buried in the ground. So the chances of them shooting off into the crowd based on what happened at the summer games can't. Well, I won't say it can't, because anytime you take gunpowder and light a match to it and you throw it in the air, you don't have any control after you let it out of the basket. But anyway, for the
And
most
we have
part,
all of our environment around it controlled
yes.
in terms of weeds. And
We've spent Monday out there mowing it, getting ready. We normally burn it, but it was too green to burn, so we know it's going to dry out. So we mowed it for the show. Really, the only 2 people that are really at hazard are the 2 people up shooting the show. That'd be you this year.
Your turn this year.
I get that honor. So if there's a problem, call the chief.
That's
Anyway.
fun.
One did
You'll like it.
explode in the ground when I was out there doing it.
Thank you for
You
sharing
didn't
that.
point
A
with
at
me.
very
any-
large hole in the ground.
He didn't point any at us when we were out there.
Oh, man. He's tried to talk me back from Lake Powell to do it, and
It's a lot of fun.
these guys just talked me out of that.
Oh, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It
All right.
really
Thank
is.
you.
Thank you.
All right. Your turn.
So Mr. Phillips asked last week if we could talk to UDOT about ordinances and tall vehicles and such. We've contacted UDOT. They'll get back to us. So I'll give them a couple weeks and then
For our region, it means that we went from to our region people.
went to our regional engineer and he had to go up the UDOT
Right.
or
chain.
sideways, or I don't know which way he was going in UDOT's hierarchy, but he had to talk to some other folks.
Great. Thank you.
And the other thing, Mrs. Hartley reminded me this morning that I had forgot to bring this up. Sorry about that. We've, for a number of years, been trying to buy a right-of-way from the Union Pacific Railroad that parallels Industrial Road, runs from approximately, I don't know, 200 east,
West.
200 west, 300 west, all the way out to Airport Road. We finished that purchase, and as of the end of May, that's ours. So,
It's been a long project
Yeah.
for the mayor and Mr. Bittman.
Yeah,
So
that's good.
Yeah.
tell
lot
them
of
a
years.
little bit
That's
about
a-
what we plan to do with it.
So we've asked engineering to help us with some design ideas. We're going to connect some through streets. We're going to connect through utilities. We're going to make sure we still maintain the drainage in the area. We're going to try to do a parkway type feel.
We're also gonna do a couple of modifications, just a couple of our master plans, the street master plan. Industrial Road was never shown on the street master plan, so it'll be master plan as a 66-foot street. And then the trails master plan, there'll be a trail going down the south side of that street with some sort of parkway on it, so.
It gives us room to widen Industrial Road a little bit as well.
Thank you.
Great.
It's a great addition for the community, and I think the long-term plans for it are great. The downsides of it is now we're responsible for how it looks and feels. So we got to be aware of that.
Critical yet when you try.
We just got it. We just got the property. Give us a little time, but we'll work on it. Okay. I'm looking at the neighbors over there.
Mattresses and stuff will be gone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for persevering with the railroad,
Yeah.
pushing that through.
Thank you.
6 years in the work making?
Yeah. At least
At least, yeah. I don't think so.
6 years
6,
plus.
7,
Yeah.
8, somewhere in there. All right. Anything else?
Started doing that when Joe was in office. Yeah. it's been a long time.
Yeah, it's
No, no.
probably 8 years. All right. Are there any other staff comments? Yes. I was going to say, Danny better come up.
Yeah.
If not, Craig's going to steal your glory. So
That's right. I'll be happy to share.
I would too.
fine. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Danny Stewart, Economic Development Director. Wish we could have announced this last week. It's older news now, but the company requested that we hold off until he spoke to his employees. But the company that we've been working with for about 18 months, GoEx, out of Janesville, Wisconsin, is going to expand and build a new plant here in Cedar City. It will be built in Port 15, Utah, just on the north side of the tracks. It will be the first development in that part of Port 15. So we're thrilled about that. This is a great company. They do plastic extrusion. They will create plastic sheets and also packaging for medical devices, different products. Anyway, great company, great fit. We're thrilled to announce that they're coming here. If there are any questions.
How soon will they break ground to?
As soon as they can, we'll be seeing them shortly with some things that need to be done with the lot and those things. But as soon as everything's lined up, we'll hopefully see that construction this summer sometime.
So this is an expansion for them. It's not a relocation. They're just expanding.
That's right. The products that they make being plastic based, they're lightweight. It's very costly for them to ship truckloads of light materials to markets out here in the West. So this will be a Western expansion for them.
Great.
Thank you.
thanks,
you.
Danny. All right. Are there any other staff comments? No. Okay, then we'll move on to the public agenda with the public comment portion. If your comments relate not to an agenda item, then feel free to come up, state your name or I'll cut you off. And is there anyone with public comments? Yes.
My name is Ann Clark, and I have to tell you, I'm 64 years old. I've never been at a city council meeting in my life, so it shows you my deep concern about what I'm going to talk about. I have been, because I have grandkids here, I'm at the parks a lot. And I'm really highly concerned about the soccer park and, more importantly, the aquatic center. And when the fire chief, or I think it was the fire chief, said they're going to have fireworks there, I said, "Oh, you got to look at the weeds there and the dry grass." My husband says as we drive down the road, just look at the school. Look at the school. Don't look at the aquatic center. But 5 years ago when we moved here, that was a beautiful place. The grass at the ball field was thick and green. The, I can't even talk now. I'm so nervous. The aquatic center was very clean and pristine. Today, a dead tree is there. Weeds are about knee high now in some places. So much dead grass in the little parkways that I wouldn't shoot off any fireworks there. I go to pick up my grandson there from the junior high school, the middle school. I would try to get out and weed a little bit. Last year I was really concerned because the ball field, I don't think has been fertilized in probably 3 years, because I can tell, full of dandelions. So I called the city and I got Wade's number. I called Wade, but you call and you never get an answer back. But I will say it cleaned up. And I went, oh, good. I mean, he really listened. He cleaned it up. The aquatic center looks better. The ball field at least looks mowed. This year I've waited and it's looked terrible. I've gone to the soccer field. It was full of dandelions. Pretty soon you're not going to be able to play soccer there because there's going to be so many pits in the grass from the dandelion taking over. But more importantly, the aquatic center is just almost depressing to see how it's just deteriorated over the last 5 years. So this year I decided to call again. Now, see, this is really bold of me. I don't call anybody. And so I called Wade.
I think you're being pretty bold.
I'm trying not. My husband said, whatever you don't complain and don't give your name. But I said, look, here's the thing. I called Wade again, no response. So I called the city again and I got Ken's number. I left messages for him, no response. So one day I'm driving down and the lawn is getting mowed at the pool, the lawn that's in the pool part of the aquatic center, So I thought, what the world, I'm going to stop. And I go up and it's Ken. He was very nice, very charming. I really appreciated everything. He listened carefully to everything I had to say. And he said, give me a month. Because I said, look, you see these trees here? They're going to be bushes before long because they're growing up from the bottom. You've got a dead tree that's been missing for how long? You've got weeds everywhere. They're knee high. None of those parkways have been weeded, trimmed, or anything. The whole parking lot should be, have that, your street sweeper. It's so filthy in there. So he said, give me a month. And I said, okay, I will give you a month. He said, you will see a difference. And he's been really keeping the grass nice in the pool area. So a month's gone by, and now not only is it worse, the weeds are higher. This one weed I've been watching because I went to pick it, I was going to pick it out, but now it's like this high. So fire people, I'm telling you, don't have fireworks over there. And now I look at it, and a month's gone by, and now not only is the aquatic center worse, but the ball field. Has anyone driven by there now? The grass looks dead, and I don't know if they put on fertilizer and it's burned it. I see them watering now, but I'm thinking, here we have the summer games and they're coming. We have all these people coming. And I called Wade yesterday, and of course he didn't pick up, but I said, I would be ashamed of the work how the city looks right now in all of those places, ashamed, because it looks terrible. And being from California, I know that's a terrible word here, but being from California, I know how quickly a city can become a ghetto. And that's why I love Cedar City. I think it's been the greatest place. My kids all graduated from SUU. We've loved it here. And now I'm deeply concerned because I haven't been to Discovery Park yet, but I just see a deterioration around with weeds and so I'm just asking, I guess what I'm coming to do is not complain, but just say, can we take some action? Because now I hear that they're going to expand the ice rink, and I'm thinking we can't even take care of what we've got. So I look at the schools and I think they can mow their grass and they can have green grass and they don't have weeds. I'm down by the college. I say they have green grass. They take care of their thing. And I look at the city stuff and I'm going, ooh, but all the city stuff looks bad. And I don't know if it's city land as you come off the freeway where the Marriott Hotel is, but that rock area as you come off the freeway is just full of weeds now. And I'm thinking every day I feel like it's getting worse and worse. So I know I've taken too much time and I really appreciate you listening, but I'm really hoping that some action is taken, because I said to Ken, I don't know if it's that you don't have the funds. I don't know what's going on, but I don't see any workers out at the parks, none. I see the water going, but that's it. So anyway, I hope that, the city council can think about that, because when we keep our city lovely, then it's a lovely place to be. And with all of the Shakespeare things coming, I would hate people to come here and think, oh, it's a city I don't want to go back to. It's looking grubby, shabby, and, unkept. So anyway, thank you for listening. If anybody has any answers for me, I would be thrilled to hear them. Until that, I don't know, maybe I'll start going weeding again over there at the aquatic center. But anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have answers for you about the weeds, but I can tell you about some of the dry grass at the fields at the hills. So they, when the rain stopped finally and the warmer weather came on, they recognized a problem they were having with their capacity in their sprinkler system. They've tried to remedy that in the last week. They're trying to get more water on the grass so it greens up. They have fertilized, they have sprayed. I know all of the ball fields and all of the city turf, but we have had a problem up there with the water system.
I do know when we were going to the soccer games.
You'll have to come back to the
Come back
mic,
to the
ma'am.
microphone.
I do know when we were going to the soccer games, my husband would say, oh, they put, weed killer on the dandelions because you see them starting to die. But I just don't understand. See, because at the aquatic center, for example, if somebody had come in and sprayed initially in the spring, there wouldn't be, now that would have been a relatively simple job. But now to go in there and clean up all those weeds and the dead bushes that are in there, everybody go by and look. Because if you drive in and drive around the parking lot, it's going to be a more costly and a horrendous amount of work to clean it up. But I just, I do see them watering at the grass, and I'm thinking, okay, is it a day late and a dollar short? But at least I'm glad to hear that they've fertilized and put weed killer on, because the dandelions are just taking over everything. But I really look at it, I think everybody else is able to, and I hate to complain, because I thought Ken was very nice and he was very, he listened to everything I had said, but it's been like 5 weeks and I don't see any improvement at the aquatic center at all. And when you drive by and a tree's missing and another dead tree is there, and then all the bushes are dead and the weeds are high, it just looks like the premier spot that should be where we all go, and it now looks really
Mrs.
bad.
Clark, can I ask you a question? You're talking about the aquatic center is deteriorating.
Mm-hmm.
Are you talking about the lawn and the weeds and the debris? That's what you're referring
Yes,
to.
I haven't been inside. The last time I was inside was a little while ago. The inside was fine.
Yeah.
I'm talking about
Okay.
all of the grass, the
Oh,
landscape.
you're right. I was up there 4 or 5 days ago, and the parking lot does look bad. You're
So
right.
that's my only concern, because everything else looks beautiful. You look at the middle school, it looks beautiful, but the aquatic center, I just hate to see it go, because I know when I would talk to Ken, he said, well, we just finished. Have you been out to the new ball field, over by the monuments? We've just finished doing that. I want to say, but Ken, if you take care of it here, you don't have to redo it and spend, thousands and thousands of dollars. But anyway, thank you for listening.
Thank you.
I do know that when we were trying to get the cemetery ready for Memorial Day, they had a really difficult time because we had winter up until end of May. And so I know it was like all hands on deck to try and get the cemetery, because they hadn't been able to get out there. And because of all the weather, the rain, everything, it's made the weeds grow faster. Then all of a sudden it got warm. Everything is growing. So I think that's contributing to it. I know they came in and said, hey, we're going to get the cemetery pulled together before then, but be patient. We're trying. So I don't know if that's something that's contributed to that, but
I'm sorry. I just feel like here's the truth. I just feel like something has to be done, and to me, it's to the point now. That's why I'm here, because I've driven around for year after year, and it's gotten worse. But then this year, it's so bad. I told my husband I'm going down and saying something, because it's to the point where I think it's critical now, where you're going to really lose a lot of things. A lot of plants are dying. I mean, it just looks dry, but I just feel like somebody's got to get on it. And I've tried to go through the right ways by calling and just saying, look, I have some concerns, but nothing's happening. I mean, literally nothing is happening. And I look and think, well, where are the parks people? Shouldn't somebody be up here and concerned that the bushes are dead and they're going to have the fireworks thing and there's weeds all over? I don't know. So,
Well, I think you created the call for action, and I think
I really appreciate it.
happened.
Thank you.
okay, thank you.
Right. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council? No? Okay, then we will move on to our business agenda with the public portion first. With item number 1, consider single event alcohol permit for the beer block party on July 27th at 223 North, 100 West.
Hello, Sarah Ridgel with the Policy Kings Brewery. I'm just here to talk about a really fun event that we're trying to get together since we are the only brewery here. We're kind of trying to bring Cedar City, especially since the Shakespeare Festival is going on. Thought it'd be a perfect time to do the very first beer block party, beer fest, whatever you want to call it. So I'll just wait for this to come down.
How you coming with your outside?
It's approved. I'm sure everybody knows about that by now, but I got it approved. Yes, so people are enjoying sitting outside and having a beer. It's been amazing. So I appreciate all the work and all the annoying phone calls everybody got from me daily to get it done. So I appreciate that. So I sent in a little handwritten plan. Is that on here or no? Do I just explain?
Yeah, just kind of
We
explain.
Okay.
We've had it in all of our packets.
Okay,
and-
perfect.
yeah,
Okay.
So we've seen it
So
all.
what we're trying to do is pretty much bring like the beer fest that they do in northern Utah, the Oktoberfest that they kind of do in Tuacahn, and some things that they do in Zion here. So we have breweries that we have that are going to be coming. We're actually going to be serving the beer in our roped-in patio area. And then we have vendors that are going to be coming from local businesses. We have food trucks, and we also have some inflatables because it is going to be open to families. So it's just going to be in our parking lot. Our parking lot is going to be blocked off. There will be on-street parking on 100 West right there. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I have security. I have all things responsibly organized. So we have everybody getting checked, but mainly making beer seem fun and making it seem more family oriented and not making it seem like such a sin is what I'm trying to do. Because we are here, right?
Can you remind us of the date and the time, please?
Yes, it's July 27th, and we're looking at anywhere between 1 to 9 or 1 to 10. So it is going to be an all-day community event. So I guess
Do you have any
questions?
questions? Chief?
Chief, okay?
Oh, yeah. I was wondering if you were coming up before me.
Before you didn't want to steal your thunder. Chief Adams with the police department. The background's been done. Nothing of concern. We give it a positive recommendation.
Sarah, you're going to have music with this event?
Yes, I am working on getting live music and also just a DJ that can come and play music out of the speakers. It's been hard for me to get anything concrete because honestly, no one thinks I'm going to get it approved. So I know I will.
Really?
And I know you will, but it's been hard for me to get people to commit. And so that's another thing is I want to just show the state of Utah that we can have fun and do awesome things too and bring everybody together. And so I really want to get it approved just for that as well. But yes, live music is going to be there, bounce houses. We've got SUU and Thor are coming to the event with their inflatables as well. So we're kind of trying to bring everything together for that.
Great.
Council have any other comments, questions?
No.
You good with this going on consent?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, item number 2, consider a single event alcohol permit for a beer garden at the July Jamboree Car Show. And Mark's not here. Is anyone else from Centro or Jamboree?
This is pretty standard fare for the July Jamboree. I know, being a member of Rotary, I know it's been done for years.
Yep. Chief Adams again, same as always. No concerns, positive recommendation. Yep.
Will it be a similar setup as far as you know?
As far as I know. Yeah. Yep.
There's no problem.
That's parking lot
Correct.
near
Great Harvest.
Great Harvest.
Comments, questions from council? Good with this going on consent?
Yep.
All right, item number 3, public hearing to consider an ordinance amending the zone from residential agricultural to mixed use in the Iron Horse RDO Pod 1 located near Cedar Middle School.
Ron Larson with Levitt Land, and this is the first of our pods from the RDO that was recently approved. This is pod 1. This is up near the middle school, across the street from the baseball diamonds, softball diamonds. It's 93 acres, I think it is. The plan is, originally we had planned to do 3 different uses. We were going to have a small, about 1 or 2 acre commercial area, some R3 and then R1. They've changed. They're not going to do the commercial. They've decided not to do any commercial. So it's pretty much going to be some R1 single family lots and some R3 townhome development. And so this is just basically following the RDO plan.
Ron, I talked to, I see Brandy is here, Mr. Drew, so I don't want to put words in your mouth, Mr. Drew, but I just want to make sure that on the R3 side, we are talking about townhomes, right?
Yes.
Not any kind of a apartment complex.
No, it's not. It's a townhome project. Right. Be 103 total units when it's all done, but probably take a few years to do that. But so 103 townhomes and then 53 single family lots.
And then there's also a bunch of open space that will be
left,
and
the remainder of it, which is probably well over half of the property, is actually all be open space and be deeded to the city as open space.
It's also
the vicinity plan for these two. There's basically the 2 developments: the single family subdivision and the PUD will be coming through shortly. I mean, it's going to be in planning commission next.
But will this be developed? Will pod 1 be developed in phases then?
The single family lots are going to be done in 1 phase, 53 lots. The PUD will probably be done in 4 phases. But as far as that's it. That's all there is to it. So.
Okay.
It's also a master plan trail that's going to be going.
Yes. There's actually a couple.
Right through the middle.
Is that a paved trail?
That'll be a paved trail.
The one is a master planned one that comes around, and then there's another one I think that drops off that's also master planned, and then we were looking at maybe another one to just connect up and down right here, but that one would just be a regular trail.
Ron, can you show us where the sewer is going to go?
The sewer for these, the only part that can really be sewered is this upper area right here, which is what we're developing. The sewer is located right here at this intersection, and there's a sewer already stubbed up to the property. So all of this area will sewer over to that point and go out. And then water, there's an existing 14-inch water line here, which will actually be relocated into the public roads that are going to be part of the subdivision. And then that'll also serve for the development, the water. I actually have a copy of the vicinity plan if you want to see it. Like I say, it's going to be coming to you here in a couple of weeks, but
I'm sure they'll probably address this in a couple of weeks and come back, but do you see any impact relative to the school, Cedar City Middle School, with traffic and school buses? And
everything is going to be accessed off the Cove Drive. So the access to the PUD, there'll be 2 public road entrances into the project.
Right.
And then the PUD enters off that. So there won't be a lot of traffic out other than just those 2 public roads. Yeah. Not going to be a lot of driveways. Just those 2 roads is all the access that there'll be.
Okay. Are there any other comments, questions from the council? Okay, then we will open the public hearing on this item. If there's anyone that wants to address the council on this. Okay, we will close the public hearing and put this on our action agenda. Okay, public hearing to consider an ordinance amending the city's open burn ordinance.
So a month or 2 ago, we had a discussion about opening up Thunderbird Gardens to BLM would like to give us some money to put in some burn pits. The current city ordinance wouldn't allow burning in that area. So this is just an adjustment, an amendment to the ordinance that says once those established burn pits are put in place, then bonfires could be held in those pits only. That's really the exception to it.
Mike Phillips with Fire Department. We're good with it. State Forestry, Fire and State Lands is good with it. The BLM, it's a good place to do it, like the Three Peaks Recreation Area.
Thanks
Do you know
for
how many fire-
following through on that.
Sorry, go ahead, Terry. Excuse me.
I was just going to tell them thanks for following through on that.
Do you know how many fire pits they're recommending? Has that been talked about?
Not that I'm aware of.
I'm not either.
And do you foresee any problems for people that live near the golf course and places like that with smoke and those kind of things that might occur? Or is that
It's
negligent?
It's quite a ways up that canyon out of
Yeah.
the way, and I don't think that's going to affect any of those houses.
I
They
mean,
burn up there all the time now.
I mean,
so.
there already is fires being burned up there, so let's try and control them. I mean, let's be honest, right?
Yeah, so this, just put parameters around.
Okay, well, if it's got your blessing, then I think it's probably be okay.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other comments, questions from the council? No? All right, we'll open the public hearing on this item. Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing and move this to our action agenda. All right, item number 5, public hearing to consider an ordinance regulating location of cargo containers. Who wants to?
I'm Tina Dickinson. I wish we could be as quick as we were last time, but I don't think that's going to happen. Where this is at is that we proposed ordinance. It went to Planning Commission. Tyler redid it so that basically all it was going to regulate was setback and stacking. And basically, we just have a couple of other options as well, and just kind of want to bring it to the attention of the county commission and whatnot, because I think we have some conflicts of interest. First of all, we've learned that as far as these cargo containers are concerned, the 40-foot ones are supposed to, you're not, according to the building department, those are supposed to require a permit as well as a building inspection. Anything over 200 feet that's put on your lot is supposed to require a permit and a building inspection. And so I don't know if it's a great idea for us to give them the idea in this that they can put any of those on their lot, and just as long as they're set back, because those are supposed to be under building code. And not be, the 40-footers are not supposed to be on there at all unless you have the permit in the building code. Also, one thing it didn't address was the burying, and although I think it's a good idea to not have them stacked, they're actually built for stacking when they're shipped. They're not built for burying, and that's a bigger concern. And I do have information on that. We submitted some videos, as well as I have a thing here on the burying of them. Even the people that are sort of the doomsday preppers have quite an extensive thing on how you do that. And so it really should be sort of under a building code as well, because they can be really dangerous. They've collapsed, they rust, and they're not built for being buried, and they
When
are.
you say burying, they're burying them completely?
Yeah, well, yeah, or halfway, or, some people are using them for like bunkers, or I don't know what. But they can be really dangerous. So I hate to see us not address that. I do have some information on that if you want it. Also, just wanted to bring it to the council's attention that even since we first proposed this, just the last couple of months, we had a list of people who have addressed this in the city. I think that if we were to pass the one that Tyler wrote, and he admittedly said he wasn't that into this ordinance, even since we've done that, though, there's been a number of other places, including Parowan, Enoch, Springdale, that have put in ordinances, and we just do want people to understand that whether they like them or don't like them, or are bothered by them or aren't bothered by them. I mean, personally, I'm not bothered by them, but I can kind of see a trend coming statewide and nationwide of people trying to address this issue. And I've seen St. George since 2013 try to enact something because it just becomes a problem. Many of them are not in good condition. We have billboard signs in the city that say you can't have, a big billboard within the city, but many of these containers are like a billboard with, advertisements and whatnot on it. And so And if we did do the last one that was approved by the condition, it would literally be the least restrictive in the state. I mean, Parowan took 1.5 years to draft theirs, and they actually did a really nice job. And they just barely kind of got hooked up on some square footage issues and didn't pass it just in the last couple of weeks, but the rest of it wasn't really debated. So Vicki can help me find where I put it. And it's right here.
Parowan
Will you state
had a
your name
minimum
as well?
minimum lot size. I'm sorry, Vicki Graham,
Thank you.
Tina's staff. That's how I get listed, but that's okay. And just a brief pedigree: 4th generation out of Richfield. Went to high school in Moab. Raised my family in Arizona and California. Got lucky enough to retire in Cedar City. So don't penalize me for a 626 area code if you have to call me. Okay. Parowan put together, it took 1.5 years to put it together. They covered everything. They covered container size, containers in lot sizes in residential, in commercial, everywhere, whether they could stack them. The only thing they didn't cover was burying. And we had sent in to, I don't know how you pronounce her name, Michael?
Mm-hmm.
Our updated one that had a video from YouTube on the reasons why you should not bury them. They're not built to take the pressure from the sides. And we have lovely freeze thaw and moisture here, so they can create a problem. So the bottom line is, if you bury it, you have to do so many things to it structurally. You might as well just build a basement. But they shouldn't be buried. Parowan's ordinance was 3 pages long. It hit everything. It covered the lot size, like I said, the container size, whether or not you could stack them, what to do with grandfathered containers, which is essentially nothing. Unless somebody decides to move it or relocate it on their lot, then it has to comply with the new law. They did need to be painted, either an earth tone color or to match the house, and to remove all signage or graffiti. They did a beautiful job. And it didn't pass because the big crux was the minimum lot size was 1/3 of an acre before you could put a container in a residential zone. And the city council wanted it to be 1/4 of an acre. That's where the big issue was. When Springdale passed theirs, they did a whole page of why they decided to just not have them at all. Completely ban them, because when you come up with ordinance like Parowan did with all the regulations, there's too many gray areas and too many places to interpret it the way you want. So they just said, doesn't fit with our village atmosphere, and we can't attract enough tourists based on how it looks with all these industrial looking containers.
You do? Mm-hmm. Do I have to say my name again?
Yeah.
You know who? Tina Dickinson. Okay. And I have that here. And what Springdale said was storage containers have an industrial and urban look and feel that it is expressly incongruous with the rural small town atmosphere and in the park feel the general plan promotes. Because of their standard box layout and configuration, locking hardware on doors and metal construction, it is difficult to bring storage containers into compliance with the spirit of the town's design ordinances, even when attempts are made to disguise, screen, and shield the storage containers. Because they are relatively easy to locate on a property and require little construction compared to a site-built structure, property owners do not realize they need to obtain permits for storage containers, leading to frequent setback violation and other code violations. So they kind of laid it out. And I think that was, one of the things we want to address is just, Cedar City is one of those places. My grandparents worked at the mine and uncles, and, we don't have a lot. Cedar City is the 3rd poorest county in the state. And so we rely on tourism a lot. And so, if we do let it get to a point that it doesn't look that appealing, I think that we're really affecting, whether people want to live here, whether people want to come here. And I think it's, it's important that and I think one thing, the point we kind of really wanted to make is just that whether individually we think this is a problem or not, it's clear that nationwide and statewide, people consider it a problem. And by how many people who have attempted and have enacted, in fact, embarrassingly so, Enoch just enacted an ordinance on June 5th that is more restrictive than this. They require them being painted. So, you know, I just hate to see Cedar City get behind the curve on this, and because it seems hard to catch up to. St. George, you know, got so big. They started in 2013. They've had a real difficult time kind of getting through to where they want it to be because it's just so large that they're, you know, they've had more difficulty. And so I'd just like to see us not play catch up on it. And, you know, I think we've presented what we need to for you guys to make a decision. I think the only thing I need to add here is just that that we do really need to look at the Cedar City building code for sheds, barn, and detached garages, because while even if we, first of all, Parowan's did ban them in their historic district and then made some accommodations for outside that historic district. And so, you know, there's options like that. And, but we need to take into consideration that we already have code in place that is supposed to be regulating anything over the 20 footers are about 160 square foot. And we're not supposed, no one's supposed to be putting anything on the yard that's over 200 square foot without a permit and a building inspection. And so the 40 footers shouldn't even be there in the first place without those permits and inspections. And I just feel like that I think we have an opportune time now to get this under control. And I think if we just go too easy on it, we're going to be back revisiting it a lot, which I don't think anybody needs to keep wasting their time that way. You can kind of see what all these cities have done, and I think we can learn from them in what they've tried to do. But anyway,
Do you have copies of those 3 cities, Enix, Springdale, and Parowan, that you could leave with
I'm
us?
going to leave you all of this.
Okay, don't.
Yeah, we don't want that much to read, but yeah, if you could get them to the mayor and she can send them out to us.
And I think the public needs to understand, we've seen in one version, 2 versions of this proposed ordinance. We've seen the version that is presented by these folks, and then we saw the version that was adopted or recommended by staff after their review. So there are two versions, one much more restrictive than the other. And I think the staff tended toward self-governance and.
Yeah, so I can go through those.
Yeah, I would
Like-
appreciate that because I have some questions I'd like to.
Yeah, so when Miss Dickinson came in, I met with her and they relayed their ideas and we crafted an ordinance that they were comfortable with. After getting them comfortable with it, I then presented it to city staff, and staff on the flip side was uncomfortable. So I relayed those thoughts to the planning commission. The planning commission asked me to go out and write another version that staff would be a little more comfortable with. So Miss Dickinson's version recommendation for the cargo container ordinance would restrict cargo containers from all residential zones. There'd be a couple exceptions for that. One would be they could be in a residential zone for up to 6 months if they're being used for construction, remodeling, or moving purpose. The other exception would be that any city-owned property that's residential could have cargo containers. And then the other section was that cargo containers that are currently located in residential zones would be deemed non-conforming uses and would need to be painted to match their home, so that no one would have to move their cargo container once this ordinance was passed, but there couldn't be any new ones moved in. So staff's concerns were, there was a few concerns. One is, and this is just me personally, I hate writing an ordinance that says this applies to everyone except us, right? That's what we're saying. Everyone else can't have them in the residential zone, but the city can. And one reason why the city, at least from my perspective, why we need them in residential zones is because we use them all the time. All of our parks are residential zones. Veterans, if you look around our parks, we use them to store equipment, different things like that. So the other component that staff didn't really like is this cities really stayed out of the aesthetic requirements of someone's home. If someone wants to have those requirements, they move into a place that has CC&Rs that require it. But up to this point, the city stayed out of that. So the suggestion that staff came up was essentially saying, except these cargo containers can be used for residential purposes as long as they're used like a shed. So it has to be in the rear of the home and it has to meet the setback requirements. The exception would be if they're being used for construction, remodeling, or moving purposes. And then,
Is there a time limit on that?
no, and the reason why I didn't put a time limit in that is because if I'm remodeling my basement bathroom, I can have that done in 2 months. But in talking with some of the developers that put in a 200 plus unit apartment complex, well, that can be a year and a half. So that if the council would like me to put something in what that limit is, I could. But you just need to keep those varying uses in mind if you were to think of a timeline. The other language that we did agree on is that they shouldn't be used for human habitation. So this was, I guess, my hope at trying to have some middle ground where we allow property owners to put in their backyard what they want to put in their backyard, but also allow the uses that the cities used them for in the past.
Well, I'd first of all like to lead out and thank these ladies for taking the lead on this, at least showing a real interest and concern for something that is important and important to obviously you all in this community and then what you've demonstrated statewide and nationwide. I'm not sure how my other council members may feel, but I think aesthetics do play a part in the community. And I think we do have a role to play in deciding what our community looks and feels like. And I know for a fact that I would not want one of these next to my yard or in my yard. Others may feel differently, obviously, but I do think what was originally proposed, I didn't think was necessary out of line. We'll wait and see how it all plays out. But I think right now we have something that is so weak, we shouldn't do it at all because it doesn't really address anything, in my opinion.
Well, it does keep them out of you shouldn't be able to see them from the street. I mean, it does address that.
Right. Okay. But it sounds to me also like we have standards for building when we build basements and things like that. And if there is these concerns, and I don't know, this is the first I've heard about the burying issue, but if that is an issue and if it is a safety issue and if there are problems, we should help take the lead on that and not let dangerous things happen, whether it's private property or not. We shouldn't be hurting the citizens by allowing that to happen under our watch. So that is something I think we should consider if it really is a safety issue. So I would like to see us not back too far off on this, but I'm waiting to hear what others have to say. And if we don't have enough information, we shouldn't act on it yet. If we need more time to study it, which it sounds like Parowan did ad nauseum, and then they voted it down over one issue, a quarter acre over a third of an acre.
Yeah.
Seems to me somebody could have made a motion to, but anyway. I don't want to rush this if we need more time. I don't know that, but I'm just trying to take all the information in.
And I have the article, one article, we sent 2 videos on the burying of these, if you guys need that, how it,
Or just give us the website. We can
Yeah.
watch it or whatever.
YouTube video.
Everything's on YouTube.
Everything's on YouTube. Yeah.
But this is coming from the community that does bury them. The kind of graywolfsurvival.com. And,
Well, you're going to have people like that, or they're
and they are
survivalists
telling you, don't, like there's a lot of work to be done on burying them.
Right.
They're not meant to do that. Yeah. So.
Okay.
Tyler, would you have some opposition to referring to the burying to go like through the building department to, if we look and that's an issue, or you don't want to go there?
I just think if someone wants to bury something that's not smart, that's their right. I mean, I'm not gonna go bury one in my backyard. Yeah, we need to make sure that we got an electrician that's doing stuff right and they're hooking into our sewer right, but that's a long road
Okay.
that we could go down. And that, the other concern, I know Mr. Cousins would bring this up if he was here, is how are we going to enforce this?
Yeah.
And I would encourage the
Sure.
council to, once Tina brought this to my attention, I
Sure.
started driving around town. I couldn't believe
There's a lot of them.
there is.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah, once you
There's a
start
lot.
looking for them.
Right on Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're not very attractive. I don't care if it's private property or not. They're pretty industrial looking.
Yeah. And I will say this, I said this at Planning Commission, don't misinterpret my words. I don't think like staff nailed it. We got this perfectly right. This was our attempt at trying to find some common ground.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If we're not ready for this, I don't want to go to a vote on this or an action meeting and be making the wrong vote on something that isn't addressing the issue. So I would urge us that if we don't think that we're ready for this, I think we take some more time and we figure out what the real issues are and can they be addressed. And maybe they can or can't be, and maybe we've reached that point. I don't know, but I know this is hitting me. And when I looked at this, the little feathers went up on the back of my neck. So I had to sit and calm down a bit and think about it.
I can't speak for everyone, but I know me and Vicky, especially Vicky, has done an extensive amount of research. And I think, like I said, we can really learn from what the other cities have done. I've got a list there of all the cities that have addressed this in Utah alone, not nationwide.
Right.
And it is being addressed nationwide because it's a really growing thing to do. And I think also we just really have to address in this that if we're addressing cargo containers, we have to be really clear about what size we're even allowing. I mean, at the bare minimum, I think we want to at least rise to Enix standards and say they be painted because that's what's in theirs and they just passed it. And like I said, the burying is it's dangerous. It needs, and I hear Tyler's point because, maybe you want that addressed by a building inspector, but yet, we're having a real problem with them, people just burying them, people not getting permits. Even the 40-footers are everywhere, and those are supposed to be gotten a permit for. I have that from
Well,
Galen
that's the problem. Our
Matheson,
building
if you
inspector
need
is
it.
so busy with everything else.
Yeah.
This is another thing that they don't have time to do.
And so it's something we may want to address in the ordinance because, so it's clearer and there's more recourse for it. Because like Tyler said, in situations like this, I think in one point he says, how is it addressed? Well, there's money to help people kind of reinforce getting them, to the way they should be. It's not like people are going to go around and just, be ticketed or anything like that. They have where they go and advise them and then, a warning or
There's an
whatever
appeal
else.
process, sure.
Yeah. And even in ours that we proposed, we didn't really recommend that the ones that are already there, we sort of recommended them being grandfathered in anyway, but so this is really just applying that we don't turn into, like I said, I'm gonna diss Detroit again, but it's just so we don't turn into Detroit, because we do rely on that, look and feel of Cedar City for that tourism. Like I said, my grandparents and uncles worked at the mine, and a lot of people I know then I worked at Coleman, and then we worked at, the people worked at Smead. Now most of the people I know, especially young people, they're working in the tourism and the Shakespearean Festival and the, college. And we really rely on that. Like I said, we're the third poorest county in the state. Yeah. And we really rely on that. I just don't think we can afford to just keep turning a blind eye to that when we rely on it so much, So,
okay. Well, thank you.
Just from the perspective of our use, we don't only use them for storage of materials in our leisure services division. We've also got quite a few of them we use as a training center for our fire department. We intend to add on to that to allow them to do a kind of build it up taller so they can train on larger and larger structures. For us, it's as far as the fire department goes, it's an economical way to provide a safe training center when we,
You got the one on 16 Hub.
that's the one out by the airport.
Airport.
Yeah. So
Just,
that's how we've used them in our business.
yeah. And our proposal only addressed residential. Anyway, so
Yeah.
it wouldn't apply. I know Tyler has expressed some concern about the city being able to have them and residential not, but our proposal isn't addressing anything but residential.
Yeah, we have to think of the whole. We have to think about the whole city though, and
Yeah.
everything else. So that's
Yeah.
why he's bringing that up. Okay.
Council have any further questions for these two ladies?
Thank you.
No? All right, thank you. We will open the public hearing on this item.
Good evening, Tom Jett. Just one quick note with regard to we're the fifth poorest, not the third. So we're coming up in 2018, according to the state of Utah. Not much better.
It's going the right
But we're
direction.
moving on up.
The trend is right.
Like the Jeffersons. The second thing is the 200 square feet issue. That applies to, I'm going to use them by name, Cumberland sheds or those pre-built storage units that, the stick built that I'm referring to. That applies to that also, the 200 square foot. It's not just cargo containers.
Right.
It's any of those issues that get stuck into people's backyards and personally, I don't have an issue with the cargo containers, but just wanted to enlighten you on that. We'll open up somebody with the tape measure going around measuring things, and it may be a real issue at some point. So thank you.
Carter Wilkie, I just wanted to mention one quick thing on this. I am on the board of our HOA out at Equestrian Point, and this came up in one of our last meetings. Our park and our equestrian center is zoned residential, and we have a 17.5 acre park there, and we have a storage container. So the HOA is, well, what if they decide to pass it? So that's just something to consider if they say all residential areas, just like how the city has parks in residential zones. Here we have a 17.5 acre parcel that happens to sit in a residential zone, and we're concerned about what we're going to have to do. As an HOA, we want to be compliant with the city's laws and ordinances. So just take those kinds of things into consideration.
Could you paint it?
Could we, or is it?
Could you?
Oh, I don't know. There's no houses within eyeshot of it. It's right in the middle of a massive thing so I don't know. Paint it what color?
I don't know.
What does it have to match? The ground? I don't know. We can paint it. It's already tan. So that's just going along with what Tyler was saying. That's just an example of something that there's lots of, it's not just homes that use these. So thanks.
Thank you.
Christopher Quick. I was just thinking when everyone was talking, I don't see really why we should. I can see why they're dangerous if you bury it, whatnot, but I don't like the idea of just more regulations put into our city. And so I personally have never really noticed any of the containers on Main Street before in people's backyards. I'm not snooping around looking. So it doesn't really bother me. Someone does something on their private property. So there's just my 2 cents on the subject.
Tyler Melling. These storage containers are kind of like title loan shops. They're a sign of other issues. When outbuildings become cumbersome to build, as far as the regulations, people are looking for alternatives like prefabricated sheds and storage containers. So to whatever extent the council limits people's ability to use this option that has become popular nationwide because of its versatility and availability, I would ask the council to consider relaxing some of the regulations on outbuildings in general, make them easier for people to build, maybe reassess with the advice of people who know more about it than I would, the requirements when plumbing, electricity are involved, or the square footage requirements without building. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any other public comments? All Okay, then we will close the public hearing. And this, yes. Were you going to say something?
Well, I just say, for me, I don't know this is ready to move on to action meeting because I don't know how everybody else feels. I'm not ready to vote on this next week.
Yeah, but hopefully we can get some of this good information that has been shared, and I don't know, we may not vote on it.
Yeah, we may end
Right.
up,
So
if
the
it goes on the consent agenda.
It wouldn't go on
So-
consent no matter what.
Right.
Council
Yeah.
could
Oh,
have
I
the
mean,
option
go on
to
the action.
table it.
Yeah, so
Okay.
we can
So
review all we
Okay.
can during the week.
do you want it to go, we good with it going on the action agenda for
Mhm.
next week?
Yeah.
And then we can
We can decide.
see you then?
Research it, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
And thank you both for coming in all your work. Okay, we
Thank
will
you very
move on to the staff portion with item number 6, consider annual blanket contracts and 2-year streetlight maintenance contract.
For what?
For these blanket
Oh.
contracts.
Yeah.
Ryan Marshall, Public Works Director. Jeff conveniently had a meeting pop up at the last minute, so he asked me if I'd stand up here and present this for him. It's that time of year again where we go out for our annual blanket contracts for our streets department. We go out for materials, labor, for chip seal, different things like that. We do this every year. It's a closed bid system where companies are notified, it's published, they send in a closed bid. They are opened by Jeff and his staff and evaluated, and a recommendation is made based usually on price as to which ones to go to recommend. You have it in your packets. It has been tabulated, it's been publicized, and I think it's been put up on the website by now for the public to see as well. So you can see that there's quite a few different bid items and stuff.
Yeah.
So you can go through that and look at the comparisons and which companies have bid on it. And what we're asking tonight is that you put on the action agenda or consent agenda for the approval of those contracts. Now, if you have any specific questions on them, I can go over that, or if you want to go over each one of them individually, we can do that, however you guys want to proceed.
I only have a couple of general questions.
Okay.
Number one, I noticed we didn't get any bids for the trees. Is that correct?
Yes.
So that being the case, how will we handle that in the coming year?
So the company that bid last year was unable to pull enough bonding for this year. They're still available for us to hire to do the work.
Mhm.
They're just not able to bond to put in a blanket contract. And in the last 4 or 5 years, they've been the only company that have bid on this. Being that we didn't have anybody that put in for a blanket, what it would be on is a case-by-case basis, and we could still hire them. They just couldn't bond for the full amount of the year. So we'd still probably utilize that company, basically because that's our only option around here. So.
And is that tree trimming done through the Parks Department? And is it on a rotating thing, or they just look at crisis issues, or how do they determine what trees need to be trimmed and on what basis?
Parks does it a little bit differently. They've got Wade, who's an arborist, and he goes around and looks at it. Streets, it's basically Jeff and his crews, as each area that they're going into to do the street maintenance, they take a look at the trees and what needs to
In that
happen
area
for
of
that
town
in that area.
specific. Okay.
And then they take care of that. And then if there's anything that has been notified to us of a safety issue or any concerns with overgrowth, then we'll have to go look at that as well.
Okay.
Jeff's guys are more worried about getting their equipment in and out. If there's a tree that is overgrown, they'll trim it so it looks nice, but they still got to get their equipment in and out.
No, that's
one,
fine.
One thing you'll also notice on most of our bids, we only had one bidder on a lot of the items, which is a little different from other years. We've had several bidders, but as the economy gets stronger and there's a lot of work out there, we're finding it harder and harder to get people to bid on our smaller projects. The biggest issue I think we're going to face this year is our concrete blanket contract. We did have a bidder that bid on that, but and it's the same bidder that we have currently this year, but we're coming to the end of the fiscal year and we've got a lot of money left that we can't spend because we can't get them to come out and do the finish work. Something that we might want to look at, and I know the city had this before I came here, is they had someone on staff that actually did the concrete work, and we did it in-house. That allowed us to be a little bit more flexible as far as getting in there when we see a safety issue or we get to the end of the year and we need to use up some of those funds. The streets crew had somebody on staff that knew how to lay cement and finish that. And they went out and did all that for both the streets and the water crews for the city. We have a lot of issues throughout the winter, throughout the year, where you'll have a water break and they'll go out there and there'll be a hole there, and we'll cone it off. We'll do everything we can to be safe. But, sometimes those cones disappear and it becomes kind of an issue. So we're really struggling with that right now. We do have the option that if we have a blanket contract and they are not able to respond to us in a timely manner, we can move on to other local people. But we've even tried that. We've contacted probably, I think Jeff said 3 or 4 other.
Same problem.
And they're also busy. They can't pull off to do these smaller patches of sidewalk and stuff like that. So we're really struggling with that. And I think that's something that we're going to have to look at, is maybe taking some of those funds that were identified for concrete repairs and look at maybe bringing that back in-house at this time to do that.
Can we, with those bidders where we only had one bidder, can we at least see what we did it for last year so we have some context? And
yeah.
And then my only other question was
compare the amounts.
Yeah. The bid prices that we have here in our packets and things, is that within the budget that was approved, the 19-20-20 budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they're all pretty much, they all went up obviously from last year's, but they're all within reason. They went up just a few percent. And I've got this current year's prices and bids. If you want to go through those, I can go through and show you which ones went up and which ones stayed similar.
Councilman Eisman loves numbers.
See, I'm
know he
the
does.
numbers guy. So if I can just get an email, I'll be happy.
Okay. We can send you the tabulation for last year's, or I can even leave this with you, and then you can look at that and
Here,
compare it
those-
to this year's.
Perfect. That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll let you do that.
Yeah,
And you can inform all of us.
I will be happy to do that.
Do you have any other questions, or do you want to go through each one of them individually, or?
You want this on the consent agenda then?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. Okay, item number 7, review bids to construct the wastewater treatment plant, dewatering building, lift station.
Now, this is where the conversation gets exciting.
Okay, in this last year's budget, there was a budget item for the wastewater treatment plant to install a dewatering or a pump system for the dewatering building. And the dewatering building is this is the plant out here. Dewatering buildings sits kind of over on the north end, and basically what it does, there's a big screw press in that dewatering building that squeezes the stuff that comes into it, and
Stuff being a technical term.
yes, and the
Okay.
water drains out of the building and over into the drying beds. And originally, when we did our nitrate project, the engineers had a system for that water to drain out of the dewatering building and into the dewatering beds, and it would help by putting the water in the dewatering beds. It allows that water to denitrify and makes our system work better out there as far as the treatment process. What they initially put in didn't work too well. The grades that they had on their design didn't pass the flows that we needed to. So we decided to go ahead and put in a pump station, a lift station, just like our sewer lift stations that we have around town, to take that water that comes off the screw press and pump it out into the drying beds. And we received, and there's a capital budget item put in place this year to go ahead and install that system. And let's see if I lost my page here, but we had actually the budgeted price. Let me see if I can find it. The budget for the project was $208,000. and we received 2 bids on the project. The low bid came from Mumford Construction for $165,000, and Mumford Construction just completed the sedimentation basin out on the Main Street diversion channel, and did a good job for us out there, and so we're recommending them to receive the bid for $165,000.
Is that a thumbs up?
Is there
I'm
anything
just
you want to
looking
say?
at Mr. Bonds over there.
Better be a thumbs up. He told me everything I need.
All right.
That's just to confirm that this funding is in the current year budget, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Are there any questions, comments? All right. We're good with this going on consent?
Yes.
All right. Item number 8, consider adopting bylaws for the creation of the Cedar City Active Transportation Committee.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to take just a minute and I'll turn it over to Tyler, but this began some time ago, and I'm going to blame a little bit of this on Councilman Adams because he's the one that first got me involved with the Southwest Public Health people and what they were doing. And I had the opportunity, and I thank all of you that participated last fall in an active transportation forum that we had in September, and then we had a follow-up in November with UDOT being sort of our facilitators for that. And active transportation, really what it involves is it improves our health and the health of our community. It also lowers our healthcare costs. The more people who walk and bike, the more we lower those costs and we reduce the levels of obesity, heart disease, and diabetes. And I won't read through this whole paper that I have, but I just wanted to tell you that we have a trails committee, and I recognize that, but I appreciate the mayor and the city manager at least indulging me in this. This is an opportunity, I think, where we can think about all forms of active transportation: walking, cycling, skateboarding, rollerblading, wheelchairing, whatever you want it to be. And there's lots of positive attributes, I think, for a community, particularly like ours, that is a university town, that is a tourist town, and I think trying to promote community wellness and an active lifestyle. And a perfect example of that is just what our events director recently did, was the Cedar City Slow Roll. Todd was here. I guess he just skipped out on us. But that's an example of how you can keep the community active and engage neighborhoods and people. And so it's more inclusive. It involves trails, and there's going to be overlap, of course, but it's more than trails. It's how do we keep our people active and keep them moving, take some traffic off of the road, and just sort of create an atmosphere that wants people to stay active and involved and keep an active lifestyle. So I propose an ordinance, and Tyler worked with me for several months on it. We've gone back and forth on several things, and I bring it to you tonight for your consideration, and Tyler can talk through the specifics on it.
So what I'll go through is the bylaws for this active transportation committee. Essentially, the purpose of this committee is to put together a plan of how we'll provide opportunities for citizens of Cedar City to use walking, running, cycling, anything that's active transportation, be able to get through town in a safe and orderly manner. The purpose of this committee is going to be to come up with this plan and then to work with city staff, various departments, various community organizations to make sure that this plan comes to fruition. In order to establish the plan, in order to staff the committee, what's being recommended is that up to 9 members can be appointed. Of those members, one would be a member of the city council. Those members of the committee would be required to live within the Cedar City boundaries, with the exception of a representative from UDOT. We want to make sure someone from UDOT is there so that they have a say in what we're doing, because we depend on them so much with some of the streets in our city. So there's an exception there if we can't find a representative that lives in Cedar. While on the committee, there will be a 4-year term. At the very first, those terms will be staggered. So 5 members will serve 4 years, and then the other 4 will serve 2 years. The committee will be subject to the Open and Public Meetings Act of Utah and to the Utah Public Employees Ethics Act. And then just similar bylaws like other boards or committees that the city has. There'll be a chair. In this case, there'll be a voting member. They can only act if there's a quorum. They'll follow Robert Rules of Order. There'll be written minutes kept of the meetings. Members can be terminated if they submit a resignation or they move outside of the city boundaries. And the mayor also has the ability to remove members for misconduct and for being excessively absent. I think that's about the gist of it.
Questions, comments? No?
Sounds like
All right.
Sounds like.
I have no questions.
Really? I'm surprised. All right, this will go on the action agenda.
Because it's a
Ordinance.
ordinance.
All right. Item number 9, consider resolution adopting personnel policy regarding the use of public property.
So over this past year, the state of Utah saw a case up north where I won't get into the sticky details, but there was a public employee that turned out that they were misusing public funds and had been for some time and getting away with it. And when they started looking at it criminally, it was a little tougher to charge this individual than maybe what some of the state legislature would have hoped. So they decided to tighten down this law, and for good means. What they've done and put in place would make it so abusers of public property, public funds, will be held to a felony standard if convicted. So it's serious stuff. But it's also written in the way that if a city employee, say, misused their cell phone use, that could be a felony conviction. So when I went to my prosecutor training where they review some of these new laws and talking with other government officials, mainly attorneys, there's some concern there. It goes into effect July 1st. None of us want to be convicted of felony. None of us want to lose our unemployment benefits and what we've worked for so many years. So that's why this is written. The other kind of background information is that when I wrote this, I wrote it with my belief that the current city policies that are in place are preventing misuse of public property. So I didn't really write any new policies. I just made sure it was clear how we use that public property and why it's important that we live by the policies that we have in place. So essentially what would be added to the personnel policy. Now I say personnel policy, I don't know where else to put it. So it's in front of our faces constantly, but this also applies to the city council, just so you're aware of that. So it says, and I'll read this for the public's benefit. It says public servants are responsible to protect and conserve public property. To help improve the effectiveness and efficiency of public services, incidental personal use of public property is authorized under Utah Code 768-402. It is further authorized under this policy. Incidental personal use of public property is authorized if. So the next 7 conditions have to be met. The public servant is authorized to possess the public property when the personal use occurs. The use is in compliance with city and department policy. It is part of their official responsibilities and duties to possess the public property at the time of the personal use. The personal use does not damage the public property. The personal use does not interfere with the use of property as intended for public use. 6, the personal use of public property does not increase costs to the city, and the public servant agrees to pay for any costs that may derive from personal use. So as an example, I have a cell phone. I bought that cell phone on my own. But in order for me to always be available 24 hours a day, the city gives me a small stipend every paycheck. And that means if the chief of police calls me, I answer. If a council member calls me, I answer. So in that situation, there really isn't an issue because I own the phone. I bought it. Now, Randall McCune, who's in the legal department, he chose a different plan that the city has. The city purchased his phone. And then again, he's required to make sure he's always available when he's needed by law enforcement or anyone else that calls him seeking legal advice. In his situation, the intent of writing it this way is that so if he gets a call from his wife, he can answer that, even though it's a personal call. We all know it's personal, but it's not going to cost the city anything extra. He's not taking this call when he should be dealing with a citizen and helping them out. He's authorized to have the phone at the time. He's using it in compliance with city policy, and we can go through that checklist. So that's kind of the balance I hope to strike there. Now, another example, I don't know if I could think of a good one, but if, I don't know, the fire department, they all have an axe issued to them, and he's on vacation, and he sees that axe in his vehicle. He can't use that to go cut his own wood because it's not part of his official responsibilities. He's on vacation. He can't use that public property. It's kind of a lame example, but does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So the other part of the policy deals with the use of vehicles. The concern that came up with this case up north is this individual would be going to a training in Denver, and instead of going from Salt Lake to Denver, he would head down to Lake Powell for a week because he had scheduled vacation. So he'd go down there for a week before his training and then go up to Denver. And he was getting paid mileage for that entire trip. So currently the city has, the vehicle policy is kind of dependent on the department you're in. The police department, we encourage them to drive their vehicles around town to just have that extra presence of law enforcement in our community, even though they may not be on call or working at that time. So how I wrote this was we needed to show that the benefit of using a public vehicle, that benefit substantially was in the city's favor over the personal use. So how I wrote it was that this, as allowed under Utah Code 768402, the use of city vehicles by a public servant in compliance with city and department policy shall be deemed as providing a value to the city which substantially outweighs the personal benefit received by the public servant. So it's not strict, but it also gives some flexibility there. So if I don't have a department vehicle, so I drive my own. And a lot of city employees will probably do that and have done that. And in that case, if I'm going to a training in St. George, I'll get my stipend to drive down there and back. If I choose to drive 20 miles out of the way to visit my aunt, that's just fine. It's my gas, my car. But in a situation where there's a city vehicle going down, again, it needs to be in compliance with whatever their department policy is. Obviously, they wouldn't be able to drive 50 miles outside of the direct path of travel to go get a steak. But they need to follow their policy and be using the vehicles what we deem as appropriate for what they're doing.
Do you have comments, questions?
I only have one comment. I didn't know Tyler was available to me 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Look out.
Yeah. I might need more suckers.
No, I think this is very clear. And I'm assuming all of this is in full alignment then with the recently passed House bill, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
All right, this will go on the action agenda. All right, item number 10, consider location of gymnasium and ice rink.
You want me to lead out?
Sure.
Dallin didn't leave, did he?
No, he's back.
Oh, there you are. It's
Being
like
very, very quiet. back
he's
there.
hiding back there in the corner. I got a little bit worried when I hadn't seen you for a while. So As I've worked closely with the Staleys and the staff to understand this project, I volunteered to assist with the presentation of the concept and the scope of the project. Dallin, I also plagiarized some of your information that you had sent over to me, so you'll recognize some of the things that I use. I want to make it clear that I put this together. It's not necessarily the opinion or the understanding of my fellow council members. They have not seen this. It's been very fluid. We've been working on this week to be able to get it presented tonight. Thank you. Okay, thank you. I welcome anyone to jump in as we go with questions or comments. And after we go through this, then I'm going to turn it over to Jason. He'll talk about some of the details of the funding and the sources. And then I understand the architect is here too, but I don't know him. Okay, that's you. Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilson. He'll talk about it from an architectural standpoint and answer any questions that we might have. So I'm going to begin with a little bit of history of how we got to this point. Some of this was prior to me coming on the council, so feel free to jump in there if I misstate something or misrepresent. So in 2011, the Cedar City Aquatic Center opened. Due to budget constraints, the gyms were taken out of the plans and were not included in the final design that was voted on by the residents. A second phase was planned, and it was anticipated that a gym would be built at a future date. The site for this future expansion was leveled, footings were installed, elevator and locker rooms were built, all to accommodate this. Residents have waited patiently for the Heritage Center debt to be paid off in July of 2021, so we could possibly move forward with the gym, a walking track, and the exercise equipment, completing all the pieces to make this into a full city rec center. So fast forward to 2013, when the prior city council approved a local nonprofit, which was known as Yeti, and now the Staleys are running that, to set up a temporary ice rink in that location since the infrastructure was already in place. A little over $90,000 in RAP tax was awarded to prepare the site for the rink. Around $100,000 of private funds were also spent to provide the needed equipment for the rink. Over the past years, the rink has operated in that location. However, it was never intended to be a permanent home. Rink operations have been covered by the user fees from the rink. Over the past several years, through public meetings, surveys, and a feasibility study conducted by the city, it was determined that residents of the city are passionate about having both a gym facility and a permanent home for the ice rink. Staleys have approached the city with a plan to create a public-private partnership for the ice rink. Since that time, council and staff have been working on this, hoping to establish a path to providing both of these venues. City council members are in favor of moving forward with both projects if it's feasible. A memorandum of understanding was approved by the council in April, giving the Staleys and the city staff the authority to proceed with gathering information and funding resources to see if we could make this work. In visiting with folks, I found out there's a few misconceptions out in the general public. I'm hoping to vet out tonight and over the coming week to enable council to make a determination for the gym and the rink's permanent location. Staleys in the city then go to work on working out a lease contract and ironing out all the final details to see if this is feasible for both parties. So let's start out with a discussion of what this project is and is not. So as I explained, I'm going to attempt to kind of talk through the common misconceptions that are out there in the public. As a collective group, we're going to try to outline what this project will entail. After my presentation, Jason will present some financial details. Mark Wilson, the architect, has joined us to answer any questions on the buildings. We'll then hear from Ken Nilsson if he has additional comments. He's the director over the leisure service, and then we'll turn some time over to Dallin for him to make any comments. First misconception that I hear out there all the time, this is a no-brainer. Why can't the city council just make a decision and move forward on this? So let's talk about that. Potentially, yes, this could be a no-brainer. However, there is some significant taxpayer involvement that needs to be disclosed and vetted. So I'm going to attempt to outline how this partnership can work. The next one is Staley's will cover the cost of building the rink. They are donating $2.9 million to the city. Staley's are proposing to build a permanent rink in their existing location, which was reserved for the gym. They have proposed a way for a permanent rink to be built through this public-private partnership. If they build in the current location, the cost of construction will be covered by private donations and sponsorships, with the balance to be covered from a loan that is secured personally by Dave Staley, and he is solely responsible for the repayment of that debt. And Dallin, I'm hoping when you get up, you can talk a little bit more about the community involvement and whatnot, because I don't have any numbers where you guys are on contributions and whatnot. So you might want to speak to that. The community has come forward and they're willing to put a lot of funding into this project to make it happen. Staley's are proposing the city pay the utilities on the rink operations up to a maximum of $85,000 per year for the term of the lease, which is 20 years, which would in essence pay the principal debt service on the Staley's note. If all goes well, over the 20 years, Dave expects to fully recover his investment made into the ice rink. However, we need to acknowledge he accepts and bears the risk and the full responsibility of the debt repayment, whether the rink is successful or not. So the Staleys believe in this. They're willing to take that risk, but over this 20 years, they expect to recoup that money back. The city only has to pay the utilities. So I've seen that as a blanket statement out there. So let's talk about that. As I mentioned, the term of the lease that they've proposed is 20 years, and we're to pay a maximum utility cost of $85,000 a year. For 20 years, that amounts to $1.7 million investment of taxpayer money. Staley's anticipate the utilities will be less than $85,000. However, it's really an unknown. The Bend, Oregon rink that they submitted as a most likely comparable shows the utility costs for around $100,000. But what they're asking is the city to give a maximum of $85,000, put a cap on that. Another thing I hear out there a lot is heat exchangers will be installed to limit or reduce the utility costs and heat the pool. In actuality, no one really has investigated this or the feasibility of this completely to date. There's been no discussion of who pays for the heat exchange equipment, what the net savings effect is. The ice and pool hours are not concurrent with each other, so there's discussion on whether it would be effective or not. Pool's closed when they're out skating, when the chillers are running. The study may be completed at a later date, but we simply just don't know right now. The next one is the Aquatic Center operates at an average loss of around $500,000 per year, and the rink will help that. If the current annual loss at the Aquatic Center is now a minus $500,000, it now will be a minus $585,000. As proposed, the city will not receive any revenue outside the annual lease income of $1 a year. The gym can simply be moved to the front of the building. The city has provided 2 additional options for the permanent location of the ice rink. One is directly to the west of the Aquatic Center, west of the office area, and another one to the southwest out on the corner. Jason will talk a little bit about the additional costs and whatnot that are anticipated with these options. City has already invested a significant amount of taxpayer money in the existing site with the intention of adding the gym at a later date. No one has an accurate cost at this time, but improvements to that site, they include the site work, the leveling, the footings, 2 walls and an elevator, just to give you an idea of what things were put in there at the time the aquatic center was built to accommodate the second floor walking track and the gym facility back there. If the gym is moved to the west of the aquatic center, costs are expected to increase a minimum of about $800,000 to construct the gym. So if we leave the rink there and move our gym out to the front of the building, again, Jason is going to cover like the details on that. As the site was engineered for a building to be placed there, the rink can be built at its present location at a lower cost than to locate to the west on either site offered by the city. If we add the $800,000 to the utility costs of $1.7 million previously discussed, the best estimate right now of the cost to the taxpayers to approve this site for a permanent ice rink is a minimum of about $2.5 million. In addition, it should be noted with any of the planned configurations, the city will be required to provide additional asphalt parking. And in the proposal, the city will perform all the maintenance and repairs on the parking lots for the length of the contract. So with that, I'll turn that over to you, Jason.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hartley.
It was a bad time to eat a mint.
Finance. Yeah, I didn't get through my mint, so I apologize. I'm going to tell you a little joke from my son, if that's all right. If you know my 9-year-old, he is, as his flag football coach describes him, animated. That's his, yes, not strong, fast, or athletic, but animated. Speaking about a neighborhood across from ours, you said, we don't want to live there. They have taxes and fees and stuff. It's like England all over again. I think he was talking about an HOA, and I don't know who told him that. So the city, we're like England all over again because we charge taxes and fees and stuff. So
England's a beautiful country.
there you go. All right. So as Dallin and I spoke earlier, my point of view tonight is not to represent Staley Recreation or speak on their behalf or speculate on their behalf. Just going to present some financial point of view for Cedar City. So we'll see how we do here. So we've talked about a bunch of funding sources. If the city does or does not participate in third-party ventures or external events, entities, activities, etc. So some of our funding sources when we make contributions outside of the city for things that are not contracted services. So I'm not talking about when a company we hire does cement work for us. I'm talking when we distribute what ultimately are taxpayer dollars or fees to external parties and generally not for services provided. So our RAP tax, as I've cited directly from our ordinance, is something that went on the ballot and our citizens told us we could charge 0.1% sales tax on their purchases and distribute 1/3 of that 0.1% to arts groups and 2/3 to recreation and parks. Now there's some criteria for that. So since inception, we've given, we or the city on behalf of its citizens has distributed $3.7 million of Parks and Rec RAP tax. So just for public record, I keep this spreadsheet of what we've done every year. The majority of it, 3.1 million, has been on Cedar City's own assets. You'll see both Yeti and Staley Recreation have received some rewards or grants historically and made some improvements up there to their site. And then again, for reference, we also have the third that goes to arts, primarily to Shakespeare Festival gets a big portion of that, and then several arts groups. So again, these are what you could consider subsidies, but they're specified in both the collection and the distribution. And there's a committee process for these funds to be awarded to these not-for-profit groups. The general fund. So City Council has the authority to distribute dollars as grants outside of the general fund. Currently, we give away $5,000. As I've laid out here, this is in 2019, how we distributed it. We have a committee process and a presentation to City Council. You'll recognize that we primarily kind of go for charitable type causes or small city events. So that's $5,000 of dollars we distribute. And then we have line items in our budget for the Iron County Care and Share, Canyon Creek Services, and the Children Justice Center. So those are subsidies we provide to support those organizations. And I believe that's all that we are subsidizing out of the general fund. I could be wrong on that, but that's, I believe, it. Transient room tax. So in the last few years, we enacted the transient room tax, which in theory is a tax on visitors to our community that we charge through our hotel and lodging. We've moved the cost of our event employee into this transient room tax fund. Annually, we subsidize or give a sponsorship to the Utah Summer Games and Shakespeare Festival at $30,000 each. We set budgets annually for event sponsorship and recruitment. So we could give out anywhere from $2,000 to $50,000 to something such as the Tour of Utah or the UFO Festival. We don't. We could. These are there, and these are again sponsorships, grants, subsidies, whatever you want to call them. So that is the limitations of this budget. If we were to give more than these amounts, that's kind of more than that budget could do, but that is also a source for funding. Okay, so a unique thing that council is in charge of is a separate entity called the Cedar City Redevelopment Agency. It has a public-private partnership with Associated Foods. The redevelopment agency owns the Lynn's Grocery Building. In 2016, for the second time, the RDA entered into a bond to renovate and expand this time. Previously, it was to construct the facility. So the redevelopment agency bonded for $1.622 million. And Lynn's, our partner, they brought over $1.5 million in remodel and renovation money. We have a signed and formal lease where they pay us what we changed to is a fixed rent amount of $325,000. The debt service is $187,000. So in our partnership, we net a profit in the redevelopment agency of $137,849 annually. It's a 10-year bond. So after that, it will be $325,000 plus there are some adjustments every 5 years. So those are not taxpayer dollars. The RDA does have the ability to tax, but that is not where money comes from in this lease agreement. So I've been asked about what are the largest contributions we've made or grants or subsidies outside of the city. The largest one we've ever done as a city is to the Shakespeare Festival. But that was not a tax dollar. That was lease revenue money within the RDA that was gifted to the Shakespeare facility. So that was two of what, $40 million they had to raise. So that's where that came from. The RDA has also given lease incentives to tenants downtown across the street. They gave away grants to do sign improvements and tenant improvements to the buildings. The redevelopment agency's purpose is to facilitate economic activity downtown, to help businesses generate economic activity. So that's kind of its role and its purpose. And this is a partnership arrangement. And again, that's the largest grant, award, subsidy, whatever you want to call it, that the city's ever distributed is to the Shakespeare facility. And it was from this lease revenue funding. Everybody's still awake? No questions on any of that?
No.
Okay.
Very clear.
We got nice visuals.
Thank you. Okay, so as City Council is aware, you have a somewhat formal request from Staley Recreation to enter into a minimum 20-year lease on the northeast corner of the Aquatic Center property. As payment for that lease, there's a proposal of $1 per year lease payment to the Aquatic Center. There's a request that Cedar City pay the ice rink utility bills, which is gas, electric, water, sewer, the whole bit. Staley's in a financial analysis that they provided to City Council and the city on April 8th. They estimated the utility bill would be $87,900. There's been some many iterations of this discussion. It's possible that they would ask for $85,000 capped for utilities, but we base the projection off of their financial projection. They also have formally stated they will fund their entire project on that site, and they will assume full responsibility to operate and do maintenance of that portion of the facility. So what that looks like numerically, taking their projection. So if the Aquatic Center Special Revenue Fund is to absorb the utilities, now I used the projection number from their spreadsheet. If you want to cap it at 85,000, it's $58,000 difference. So in year one, the Aquatic Center has over a $300,000 fund balance. As you mentioned earlier, we transfer $450,000 or $500,000 over to the Aquatic Center from the general fund. One is to balance out its operating expenses, and two, we've been building a capital reserve in the Aquatic Center fund so that pool liners, roof repairs, chillers, et cetera, that it will have some type of a fund balance. So if we project this out in year one, if it takes on the utility payment for another entity, it will start to erode that fund balance. And 5 years from now, the fund balance would be insolvent. So on the budget side, we would have to come up with some funding because the fund balance will be depleted in the 5th year. And again, I'm not using inflation and all kinds of fancy calculations. We're just multiplying year 5 out. Staley Recreation would have a fund balance projected at 1.9 million to the positive. Cedar City Aquatic Center will be insolvent to $1.3 million unless some type of transfer is arranged from the general fund to balance that budget. So that's what it looks like on paper. I know loan amounts have changed. I adjusted this loan to $2.8 million. That's the only adjustment I made to the Staley's projections. So if their loan was less than that, then they would be in a higher positive number depending on what they did there. And again, I'm not trying to speak for them. We're just using that projection. This is what it looks like between partners at the end of 20 years. Okay, so now for the use of...
Could I ask one question on that last slide?
Yes.
So we're also assuming based on the numbers here that we're not adding any additional funds to our fund balance in the aquatic center, correct?
Yes, if things stayed the same, that's a correct assumption. So they, and again, I don't want to say this is 100% accurate. We could be negative 1.2 million. We could be negative 1.5 million.
Sure.
I mean, but we're very negative and insolvent in however you want to pencil that out.
Let me ask you a question on that too. So when you say unless we transferred money over, and that would be through the annual budget process, right? Is that how the money would be approved into there, or?
Yes. So I would, if this arrangement were made, my proposal would likely be that we transfer tax dollars from the general fund to the aquatic center to balance out its budget. So that would be, we couldn't raise rates for swimming admissions, or we don't have any other service to sell out there. So we would just have to transfer some tax revenue from the general fund to balance that out.
So keep in mind, when you transfer tax revenue from the general fund over to balance this out, we either have to increase our tax revenue in the general fund, and we've been lucky the last few years through growth and a good economy that our income has tended to increase, or you have to cut something else from the general fund. You have to stop paying for something else in the general fund to move that money over. So in a good economy, it's not as difficult because there's some growth and some prosperity around, and that means more revenue for the city. When we hit a slowdown or a poor economy, it gets very difficult.
Okay.
All right. So that's the operational portion of the request. Now the capital side. So again, because we have third parties involved, Mark our architect has drawn up some different scenarios and done cost estimates. Staff is not telling you that those are 100% accurate estimates, but they are estimates, and we've reviewed those, and those are a starting point to where I say these show us the minimum cost to do these projects. So it's possible that if they actually bid these out in the real world, they could be higher. So I'm not expressing an opinion on the accuracy of those estimates. So just using the estimates that we have to construct a gymnasium in the designed location for the aquatic center. I adjusted their construction number and I added the building permit. I sat down with the building department and we reviewed that. Now, in these plans, they do have 30,000 going to the building permit. It's actually 71,000. So I didn't know that at the time that I put this together. So in the design location, you're at 3,656,721 or so. You could subtract 30,000 if you'd like. Option 2, which is, we did one comparison. I've added another slide for a second comparison, but to move the gymnasium from that location over to the west, it would be $4,466,191. So it would cost Cedar City a minimum $809,470 to change locations based on the architectural projections. There's a potential area to move the gymnasium on the southwest of the facility. If we move the gymnasium down there, it'd be $4,336,856, or a minimum relocation cost of $680,135. Again, based on the architectural projections.
When we talked today, we found out from Kit, I guess all of the utilities run under there? Do these costs include relocating the utilities?
They do not. So
You're
thank you.
talking about under the tennis court?
Yeah, under the
Yeah.
basketball courts,
Basketball
everything, yeah, the sewer, water, everything that
Yes.
in our
So
prior discussions, we hadn't known that. So thank you, Kit, for bringing
And
that up.
this last slide, I didn't have it in my packet, but it's a new slide. Is that correct?
yes, we had some additional questions from council members, so I've added some slides to address those questions. We're trying to just keep answering questions as they come up.
These slides are all now in your council packets.
So yeah,
Added this afternoon.
and we do appreciate
No. I just wanted to let you know. if
the
you wanna go
architects
back and
drawing
reference
this for us.
them.
By the way, they worked hard to accommodate this request. It wasn't that they were trying to delay it.
Thank you.
They worked hard to get that in for us, and we included that here. So myself and several other staff members kind of sat down and said, okay, what other bits of information are relevant to this construction site that we need to present to council? So as I spoke with engineering, one issue that has come up, if the gymnasium is moved into the front area, you'll see that black and green line, which is the culinary water system. I don't know if I have a laser on this, maybe. Down right here, that's the fire hydrant. So this is the fire suppression system here. And then this is the culinary coming in to the facility. So if either of those footprints are used, we are going to have to do demolition of that water system and move it somewhere. Kit, you think that would cost how much to move that?
I think by the time you replace all the curb gutter and asphalt and everything that you're going to be tearing up to put in a new system, say around 250,000.
So we would need to add 250,000 to those prior slides. So 800,000 plus 250, so we'd be a minimum of $1 million additional cost to vacate this designed footprint for the gymnasium. Something I should bring up, so as we've talked about, there's a general obligation bond on this whole facility that was balloted, and we assess a property tax on residents. So they do make a bond payment on this wall, this elevator, and this wall, and of course the site preparation that was included in the cost of that bond. So just informational.
Is this a 20-year bond on this?
I think it's 30, but I would have to, is it 30? I believe it was 30.
I think it is.
So to the site, we obviously have water service here. We have sewer service to the locker rooms. We have power, site preparation. So those are not costs that we'd have to reincur to construct a gymnasium in the designed footprint there. Am I leaving anything out? Okay. So I sat down with Troy Maxwell, who does our GIS up in engineering, and I said, please inform me of some other costs or issues with our complex property up there. So I'm trying to relay that in this picture with lots of lines on it. So let's talk through a few of these issues if we can. So this is where sewer service ends. That's the last manhole. So
Where are you? Right there.
I got shaky hands. I apologize for that.
Okay.
So right there, that's where sewer service ends. And for gravity flow, that goes down the hill towards I-15. So again, the way the aquatic center is built right now, it's restrooms and locker rooms feed to that pipe and they go down the hill. And that's all been designed and functional. So I had Troy draw lines if this property is utilized or if this area is utilized, how long does the sewer line have to be extended? And what other issues does that bring up? These lower elevations require you to pressurize the sewer line to move the material back up into the system. So there's pumps and additional costs if those choices are made to the city. Another issue that was brought up is this dark blue line here is the irrigation water coming out of the lake. So it would actually run underneath this footprint and have to be rerouted if a facility is placed right there. So that was another issue and cost we were kind of unaware of and speculating on where things could go.
Did you add that slide to our packet also?
This, yes.
Okay.
I think
thank
it's
you.
the last three.
Okay.
Isn't it the
I
last
have
three
time
slides?
to look at what you
Yeah.
had added, so.
Over here, this is the drainage out. This is the water line running down the road. So there is water around the area. We just had some development discussion for everything going on over here. I don't know that sewer service is possible or when it would be over there. Right now, sewer service ends right here, which is how the facility is constructed and configured.
Where does the middle school sewer go? Does it go down the backside?
I believe it ties in over here
comes
and
somewhere
goes
in there.
down this same
Down the
line.
same way?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't have costs for all these various scenarios. We just want to make council aware there are utility issues. If you would like us to cost any of this, we as staff would be happy to do that. But those, again, would not be included in the architectural projections. These are some other things that we'll have to consider as fixed costs. So again, we'd have the operational side, which I've shown in the utility payment, and then there will be a minimum of $600 to $800 to $1 million to relocate from the current designed area for the gymnasium. So, any other questions for me on costs, processes?
I think it would be worth our while to get cost estimates on these reroutings and additional projects.
Okay, so specifically on,
Specifically the sewage.
okay, so sewage to run here,
Yeah.
And
okay?
then
Looks
you'd
like-
have to relocate the water.
Have to
or the-
relocate
Yeah, out of the lake if you're gonna do that.
that irrigation.
Irrigation line
Yeah.
reroute.
That would be good for either way, whether it's the
Yeah, either one,
rink
we,
or
either,
the
either way we go, we
gym.
need to know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Do you want that location, the front location? I mean, which all do you want them to cost estimate?
I'm going to reserve that until I hear from him.
Okay, so we know we want cost estimates. We'll come back to what you want cost estimates on in a little bit.
That's okay.
Okay, so I think we've addressed what we need to be aware of for costs. That, again, we don't have the answers to all that, but there are some things that we need to keep in mind.
no, we forget that there's all that stuff underground that
Yeah.
we don't know about. So
And there's all
thank
those
you.
weeds above the ground.
And there are weeds.
Yeah.
Yes, we do know that. Ken missed that criticism. So
Oh,
you
it was
know,
good. You should have been here.
Tyler and I will make sure that he,
Pass that along, would you?
yeah, we will do that. So
Okay, do you have any other questions for Jason?
Not at this
No,
moment.
thank you.
Okay, Mark,
That was
do
helpful.
you want to come up? And thank you again for making the trip and being here.
It's a long trip because I came all the way from Seattle.
Oh, my goodness.
Did you really?
Well, I was coming back anyway. I went up there for my granddaughter's high school graduation. So
Will you just state your name for the record? So
my name is Mark Wilson. I am an architect, and I was the original architect, just for a quick introduction, on the Aquatic Center, and enjoyed that process very much. There was a lot of involvement from the citizenry and from the city council, and you got a great facility. So I hope that you're happy with it. I employed Ellsworth Paulson, as they're a reputable contractor, done millions of dollars worth of construction across the state and projects here in Cedar City. And they're a great company with a good reputation. And Nathan Ellsworth is the cost estimator that prepared these cost estimates. And they are cost estimates. So this was based on some schematic drawings that were put together quickly. Let me say that as a disclaimer that I was hired by Staley's to do the original schematic when we were considering putting the ice rink there and then turning that into the gym. And it seems to me, at least at this point, that that may not be an option anymore because of the length of the lease that the Staley's are considering. But that, and then I was asked by Paul specifically, but by you folks in the city, to also prepare some schematics for some options of where we may locate those other facilities on the site. And so let me just say that I'm doing my very best to just act like I was just dropped in here from a helicopter and locked in.
Yeah, your conflict of interest is on both sides. That's good. Makes you neutral.
I'm just hoping that, you know, just like I was locked in the room for a couple of days and coming out with a decision. So I'm going to give you my opinion as an architect and my experience that I've had over the years. I've done a dozen different recreation facilities in 3 different states. And so I'm familiar with how they work, how they function. So there are some things that I consider to be the main considerations, and Jason has covered the cost part of that very well. And so that's obviously a consideration that you're going to have to work on and determine all of that. So I think cost, function, and aesthetics are the 3 things that I'm going to address. So as far as function is concerned, the thing that I see as a neutral party here is that the gym will be owned and completely operated by the city. And it requires a strong connection to the rest of the facility. And for me, as if I were to be programming this facility as far as different types of activities going on in there, I would want it to be located near the other facilities in the building, such as the pool, the elevator, the observation deck for the pool, the multi-purpose rooms, the locker rooms, of course. So that strong connection is gained by putting it in the original design location. Also, the hockey, as presently, as I understand, with Dallin's arrangement, and let me just say it's been great working with the Staleys. They're great people. But with their current arrangement, they are autonomous. And a connection to the facility is not necessary. And in fact, it's kind of a negative to the city and is not a positive to the Staleys. And I think with it, that might be a little bit of a remote location to access from the parking lot. Makes it more difficult for the hockey people to function. So I think as far as that function is concerned, I believe it's a negative to the hockey people and a positive to put the gym there. And the hockey should be put somewhere where it doesn't have a direct connection to the city facility. As far as aesthetics are concerned, I believe that in order for this thing to fit in and look like it was always there, it needs to be built with similar, if not identical, materials in wherever location it goes. So if the difficulty I see with aesthetics when we talk about this is that the different locations, see if I know how to operate this. I'm not licensed. So here, aesthetically, it helps you to maintain the sense of entry that currently exists in the facility. The entrance is easily found when you pull into the facility, which is important. It's comforting to people to be able to find where you get into the building. you will have people coming to this place that have never been there before. And it's easier if it's here rather than located here on the front. So the other aesthetic consideration is that here on the front, this is a large building that is very tall. And the scale of it, that close to the street, is also an aesthetic consideration that I think you should think about. I did listen to the last city council meeting, and the question of windows was brought up along the south and west facades. And we can do things to help that. We could put in, if you're familiar with the translucent panels that exist on the front of the aquatic center here with the roll-up doors and so on, those same panels can be put in window frames and installed in the windows so that you don't have direct sunlight, but you still have light. And that would tie in with the designs of with the panels here and would work. This has a little bit of a buffer between the street and before you get to the tall portion of the building. Here, not so much. And so that would be something that you'd want to consider. So with an autonomous location, and I don't know if that's there or if it's shifted a little farther to the west or if it's here, I think any of those work and make the parking accessible to the folks using the hockey. Regardless, I think it's fantastic that the hockey's going to be located here. And I think it does nothing but add to the synergy of the whole facility. It should be here. So with some of the things that Jason talked about with money and so on, I know that it costs a little bit more to move that gym out here. And I don't know how your funding is going to work, but it turns out to be close to $1 million to build the gym out on one of these other locations. And also it's close to that same amount for the hockey to be located out here rather than here. So based upon the estimates, those are pretty close to each other, within a couple of $100,000. And with these other utility considerations and other things that we just heard from Jason and from Kit, that's another consideration that needs to be brought up. So let me see if I missed anything in my notes here. So the setback, in order to get this thing to fit in here, I had to.
You're talking about the existing building as it is?
Yeah, it's the gym. So the gym in the same proportion.
Oh, okay.
To have it at the same footprint, basically. In order to get that to fit in here, you have to put it pretty close to the street. And it requires a new connection to the building over here. So we would have to repurpose that, the Rotary Lounge, and consider that to be the new connection between the two spaces. So there would be a new connection of a two-story building to a one-story building in either case if the gym were moved out to this space. And an elevator would also be required, whereas back in here, the locker rooms and elevators and restrooms and all those things are close by. You may have to put some more restrooms in either one of these two locations when you're thinking about the gym out in that location. So, so as far as function is concerned, which I consider to be the most important thing to consider in all of this, and based on that, I believe it's best to build the gym in its current designed location and find a place to put the hockey out here that works. It does require some fill in this area, but it's a great location. If it were built up to the parking lot level, I think it could function as an autonomous building with an autonomous function and be able to still create that same synergy in the site. But regardless, the hockey, in order for the Staleys to survive, they have to build next spring. So I don't know how your funding is going to work, whether because I know that it's a couple of years until you have funding available. So in order to give the Staleys the extra money in order to build out here on the site someplace else, in order to get that funding in place so that they can start next spring, that's something that you will have to consider and work out. But if they cannot get the hockey moved out there, I think it really jeopardizes their operation. And if it doesn't start in construction by the springtime, it jeopardizes their operation as well. So, but I do believe that, because when we considered the cost of the hockey rink, moving it from here out to here, somewhere on the site, wherever that might be, that we were looking at taking that same footprint that existed here that we had designed to fit in the gym footprint and moving it out here. Well, that could be reconsidered. I think there's some efficiencies in design that we can come to as we look at that hockey facility that might reduce some square footage, and also some efficiencies in construction, because we were limited to the typical construction because of the two existing walls, that if we considered some other type of construction, if it were located elsewhere on the site, I believe that there would be some considerable savings in structural costs as well. So you could do a hybrid building that would have a skeleton that was designed similar to a prefabricated metal building and be skinned in the same materials as the rest of the aquatic center, and do some things like that might be creative and be able to bring it into a campus effect where everything's built the same way, but using a structural system that works better for the hockey. Because the ceiling height's not necessary, it can be reduced to a high ceiling single-story building rather than a two-story building. So anyway, those are some of my thoughts. So people can beat me up and criticize me for my opinions, and I welcome that. So if you've got any questions based upon those things I just said, I'm happy to answer.
Council have questions?
That was very thorough.
That was extremely
Thank you.
helpful. Yeah. We appreciate that. Thank you very much. Your opinion matters immensely.
Don't go away. You may be coming back up here after
Okay.
Dallin gets done
Yeah, I'm
talking.
leaving.
We'll have
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
You're here now. You might have, yeah.
Dallin. Do you want to come
Well,
talk?
were we going to give Kenny
Oh, yeah.
some
Ken,
time?
do you have-
Kenny, did
sorry.
you have some comment?
Ken Nelson, Leisure Services Directors. I can't add anything to the money or Jason's world, and he's an expert, and Mark's done a great job with the things that we've talked about. So if you have any questions as far as programming or functionality, I'm happy to try to address those.
I think your comments last time you stood there, you felt like the programming and everything would fit better if the gyms were put in their originally
the way
planned
that
place. And I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No,
but
in our world, the way the building sits, it does, because of the locker rooms. The way the building was built, if the locker rooms, serve a two purpose in our building, it does the swimming pool and the swimmers, and then it does for the gymnasium. That's why they're in that back corner. If they were not to help with the gymnasium aspect, then they would be in the front lobby area, so we could watch who goes in locker rooms and go straight out to the pool. The reason that they are in the buildings situated like it is to help us with the future expansion with the gym. That's why the elevators are there, and that concept of going down the east side makes it easier for our programs if there's a gymnasium aspect. We have the elevators, we have the observation deck, we have the locker rooms, we have the aspect of O&M as far as same personnel can control same facilities and don't have to leave the building. It's not a standalone. Everything that goes into being hooked on, it allows the pool to open the west doors and the east doors of the roll-ups, depending on which way the wind blows, because it's going to blow. We have the ability to open the south door, roll-up doors of the west and the east. And so we create flow and we create, just a different vibe in the pool area because the doors are up in the evenings and it makes it nicer. And people walk to the tables, picnic tables and back and forth. And so just the way that it's structured currently, and the programs that we hope to get into in a gymnasium aspect that's not only rec programs, but hosting other events, that it allows those events to come on a Friday, Saturday, and it doesn't create a lot of stress for us as a staff. It functions well if we were to bring in an outside group to rent the facility. All those aspects, it does. You're correct. It does work better back there.
And is there a master plan thought for that furthest southwest corner there that is currently undeveloped? Is there any master plan for that?
Not that I've viewed.
Actually, I think Staley's already have a
First right of-
lease, don't they?
They have a
But-
first right of
yeah.
refusal on that property.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know that.
Yes.
Originally, it was parking design,
I'm sorry?
expansion parking.
Yeah.
Originally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks.
All right. Now, Dallin, sorry about that a little bit ago.
False start.
Dallin Staley. I wouldn't say I have a whole lot to say, or I could have a lot to say. So
Have a lot to think.
You sure you're not a politician running for something?
Real political approach.
So that's my political statement of the day. But first things first, we have a lot of shipping containers at the ice rink, so keep that in mind.
I was
With the other
during
things
that whole
being
conversation.
considered.
I was thinking that I was like,
Yeah. No, I think.
Yeah, but if you get a new facility, you won't need them, so it'll be
That's
okay.
right. So let's get this moving. Yeah, I think you've been given a lot of good information. So,
Alan, I want to ask
maybe
you-
just start if you have questions.
I want to ask you a question because I know that in the conversations I had with you, you spoke about the existing location where you are now, the advantage of not only the views, but in the sun itself and where the sun comes up and hits the ice and doesn't hit the ice. Now, with the new building, there'll be a roof on it, even though there wouldn't necessarily be sides on all four sides, or at least that's the current rendering I saw.
Yeah.
If it were to move to the west or even out on this corner or some other location, what does that do to the ice and its melting and all the other issues?
Probably not a whole lot as long as we design it the right way. So the sun from the south and the sun from the west is the biggest challenges. And I can speak to that from personal experience, but that's also been reflected in the comparable facilities that we've looked at that are pavilion style. I know we looked at least two of them, and both of them had south facing walls that were open, and both of them really fought that issue. So that's just a design thing. So from that standpoint, I don't think there's really a benefit to one over the other, other than the fact that if we put it back there, it's fortunate, I guess, that the building is built that way if it was to go there. But if it was to move, we can decide which walls go up and block the sun. So I don't think that's a big deal.
Because actually, it's still want to open it up to the north to have that synergy with the lake and everything. If you were to build there or not.
Yeah, I mean, moving it from the current location that it's at, I think takes away some of that synergy for the lake, like I've kind of said before, just for the fact that everyone that goes to the lake goes to the beach, and we'd be at the dam or further away. So is that the end of the world? No, it's not. But is that synergy quite the same? No, it's not. So, I mean, we would want the north side open just because that's the side that could be open and still block the elements. But for the synergy aspect, probably wouldn't play into that as much.
So let me ask you, if you had your preference, I know what your first preference is, but if the ice rink were to move to another location, would you have a preference over the sort of dark green-brown spot there, or the preferred corner? Is there a preference, and if so, why?
So my preference, if cost isn't an issue, would probably be out on the corner, because it could have more of an open area to the north where it's open. I think you could make a more pleasant area rather than just looking at the dam from the open side. When I had Phil Schmidt go up there and look at it with me, he warned me to stay away from that because there's just solid rock under there. From the corner. He said he would stay away from that if it was
but there was solid rock all over this. It was solid rock.
Yeah, so chances are maybe it's solid rock under the parking lot too. So that's just some of the nagging things that, I don't know. I guess it's contingencies that we'll have to consider.
Well, you're going to have to do site prep, obviously, at either one of them, but I don't know what the cost differential is, and maybe this is where Mark has to come back, because I guess what I'm trying to figure out is if it's going to cost $2.9 million or plus the other $800,000 that might cost you, I've got numbers wrong. Let's say it's going to cost you $3.6 million to build in this location.
Yeah.
Is it going to cost $3.6 million to build in this location, or is it now $4 million to build in that location?
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to say, okay, we have two possible ice rink and gymnasium, and it's going to cost, if the city builds here, again, don't go by numbers because we've had so many numbers I forget them all, but let's say it's going to cost $3.5 million to build there, and it's going to cost you $3.9 million to build there or something. So for $8 million or $7.5 million or something, we get the two facilities are built.
Yeah.
But the difference is $2 million, because one way or the other, they have to be subsidized because somebody's paying more money. And if your debt service is $2.9 million that you can hit, the question is, are we as a city willing to put $1.5 million towards subsidizing your operation because of its new location, but we get two facilities out of it?
Yeah.
I mean,
think
that's really that's the
the
crux of the
decision.
question.
I think that's a big question. I think, Jason laid out some numbers. He didn't tell you the difference. I guess we didn't really compare the difference of moving the gym compared to moving the rink. From the numbers that we received as estimates, and I've got it on a flash drive. If we want to pull it up, I put it in a little table to put it side by side. But
I thought the difference was about 900 or
I thought it was
600,000.
900,000.
890,000 and then 600,000.
Of course, that was to
No, that was
relocate.
to
So
put
I
the gym.
presented the
That was
gym
to relocate
options
the
that Alan
gym.
is saying. I did
To-
not present the cost to his
Right, I
company
guess you
to
didn't.
have the skate rink in different locations. That's what he's saying. So
Yeah,
yes,
so-
you're correct. 800,000
to move the gym.
gymnasium, but for the skate rink, he's got that. He can present it if you'd like to see it specifically to the rink. However, we've just thrown out two other variants again. So.
Sure, I know these are just estimates, but that's all we've
Well,
got
I
to
know
work with.
from Paul's presentation last week on it, wasn't it roughly 1.5 million to move the rink out to the location?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you
Sure.
can come back.
Please do.
Hey, way to be the one that has the numbers in front of you.
You're welcome. So Mark Wilson, architect. So according to the original estimates from Ellsworth Paulson, the cost of the building in the location where it currently is located was 1.9, which was 1,892,000. So I just rounded up to 1.9. And the last estimate on the standalone ice rink on the west side, which included a site cost of about $309,000 and included a little bit of reconfiguration of the parking lot. So That was 2.9. So it was 2,955,000. So it was almost
$1,000,001.
a million one, something like that.
Now, is
The
that
difference?
is that the number that you indicated in your presentation, that there might be some other construction methods or
Yes.
building methods that you could reduce that number?
Correct.
Okay.
And I believe that the site costs that are in here of roughly $300,000 that would be involved in moving the gym to one of those other locations, or moving the hockey to one of those other locations that disrupts the current parking lots, and all of the other things could be saved if you went out to the other location, and you could apply that toward whatever contingencies you ran into with rock out there. I believe you'd have to bring in structural fill regardless, and then just, but it is a single story building. It wouldn't require a lot of excavation. So if you brought in structural fill and made that work, I think there might even be some savings in site costs.
So by comparison, building the gyms in the current position they're in would be how much?
Building the gyms in the current location is 3 million, so about 3.5.
And then standalone?
Standalone hockey?
No, standalone gyms.
Standalone gyms is 4.4.
That paper that Paul gave us last week outlines that too.
Neither one of
them
your,
over. Yeah.
okay, thank you. So this 1.9.
Well, without the equipment.
That's without the equipment, without the ice cream.
Is this all in?
2.9 is in the existing place with the equipment.
Okay.
So then if you take the ice rink out to the front, it's 4.4, so it's about 1.5 million.
This is with,
Yeah.
But neither one of those has the utilities,
No,
right?
none of them has the moving the utilities and all
Mark
of that.
never calculated that, correct?
The capital cost for the
Utility
utilities?
No, that, you
The
know.
re-
we're
Not-
just
Oh,
talking about
moving this, no.
Not
that's-
relocating.
Those are not in his
None of
numbers
these
either.
figures include any type of relocation of utilities.
No,
Yeah,
that wasn't
okay.
in the scope of what we were looking at.
Right.
We didn't get into that much detail, so.
Just to remember that. Yeah.
So relocation of the utilities is another consideration.
In both cases, yeah.
Does that answer your questions?
thank you.
Thank you.
Dallin Staley again, but I was just pointing out to Mark, and Paul, you know this, but Mark was reading off the summary page where Nate had the numbers kind of mixed up. So actually the facility cost of moving the ice rink is more around 3.5 million.
Yeah. That's
So
what we
about a
just-
difference of 1.5, 1.6 million. So
That's the one I
just,
showed you.
just so we know, just so everyone's clear, I guess.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so I mean, there's a fairly significant difference in what it takes to move those. I
Alan,
guess.
Could you please speak to the public support and the offers you've had for materials to build the ice facility?
Yeah. Yeah. So we've got a list that's growing, fairly good list and growing list. Some of the big ones on that list is GAF, who has said that they will for sure donate the entire roof, liner, insulation, everything that they can supply as far as materials, and that they would really like to do more and maybe substantially more. So the more part of that is still kind of in the works. A steel building erection company, that's a very large part of this estimate, is the erection of the building. They've said that they would do at least a 30% discount on their services there. We have a concrete company that does super flat work concrete with the laser screed and all that kind of stuff for very level flat pours that's offered to donate
That's
their
important to
surfaces.
this kind of a building.
Yeah. So that's huge. That's That's a very big chunk of it. And we've got a lot of others that are just willing to do discounts and things. So where we're kind of at in that is a pretty solid, about $500,000 in commitments so far, with some other big ones. For example, Sunrock, we should be hearing back from them soon. They're pushing to just outright donate all of the concrete for everything, footings, flat work, everything, and all of the block for the walls. So that's what they're shooting for. They may not all out donate it, but they're fairly confident that they'll do something big on that side of things. So
You have Schmidt Construction, right?
Schmidt, yep, has offered to do all the site preparation and dirt work stuff. So that's a pretty big one.
Is there a number that you're shooting for as far as to get contributions and in-kind type things to where the actual loan amount's going to be? Or
Yeah, so we were really shooting to get enough of those contributions that we could get the loan amount down to 2.2 million at the most. So
you're close then.
Yeah, so that's kind of why we came to the table saying we're ready to go at this point, is because we felt like we were really close and that we're actually picking up momentum. Only a few of those that I listed off, we even had to go to. Most of them just reached out for me. Oh, another big one is all of the civil and structural engineering, 100% pro bono. So that's another really big one. So these are people that just, some of them are interested in ice skating and some of them are just interested in a good cause. So it makes it really easy to go to people when you can say all of these people that you know and work with are already contributing. We talk about the concrete company, finishing companies that are contributing, and Sunrock already knows them. And so it just helps kind of build that connection, I guess, in the community. So
do you have a feel at all for private? I mean, outside of the commercial contractors, just the general public, as far as, have you even attempted to ask? I'm asking you this question because something new came up in a slide today in another meeting that I'd forgotten about, and that was a question on the survey of if we were to do, these various things in the city, what would you be willing to contribute as a public, as a citizen towards? And the ice rink was number 4 on the list, and the gymnasium was number 5 on that list. So that was interesting to me. That
that's something that
half a percentage
What are the
point.
other They ran a
three?
half
What
a
are 1,
percent.
2, and 3?
Splash
Now
pad
I
Yeah, they were
remember
half
what.
of a
What?
percent.
Splash pad for children.
Splash pad was number 1.
He's doing one of those up
That's
the
why
canyon.
it was
Rotary's got that covered now, but anyway, that was interesting that there was only a half a percent, 0.5% difference in the two, and you're right there together.
Yeah, and that's something that we'll do in the future.
Yeah,
we're waiting for our 501c3 official letter to come back, and as soon as that comes back, then we can go after some of that and hopefully bring our loan amount down more. And really all that does for us, it doesn't put cash in anyone's pocket, but it just makes it so that our operation can make everything we have to offer more accessible to the people that we want to offer it to. If we have less expense to cover, our prices can be lower for everything across the board. We could offer scholarships for people that maybe aren't as well off and all that kind of stuff. So I guess any benefit that comes to us in the form of lowering our costs or financial contributions is just really a benefit to those that'll use the facility. So
I have a question that, Tyler, I don't know if you can answer this, but I'm thinking about what we're looking at approving next week. If we approve to give the Staley's permanent location, and we know what the cost and the implications are, $2 to $3 million. Do we, as a council, have the authority to approve that, or what kind of process does that look like? Because
Yes.
Not approving writing a check or anything, but we know what the implications to the taxpayer would be. How does that look?
So next week, in my mind, the only approval would be location. And then obviously tied to that location is going to be some amount that we're informally
Right,
saying.
that's what I'm saying. It's not like we're saying, okay, we're gonna go spend 2.5, but we are.
But I think we need to negotiate that with Staley Reg Management to be able to say, look, we finally got location tied down. That's the first hurdle. Now we need to negotiate what the city's contribution is going to be. If it's the ongoing utility payments, if it's a lump sum up front, whatever that looks like, we'll know better after we choose a location. And
Okay,
those
but
other
it-
commitments
but
are going to
back
come
that up-
down the road.
But back that up though, for us to say, okay, we're gonna give you that location. Does that obligate taxpayer funds at that point if we say that?
We haven't
Okay.
entered the lease.
All right,
There's
just
a-
wanted to make sure as we're considering this, like how that approval looks, what the implications and, okay, thank
But
you.
my assumption is that the next stage of that will move along at a pretty rapid pace. I mean, those conversations will continue because once the location has been determined,
Mhm.
and we know that now numbers can start be flowing in a little more accurately, that, okay, now the difference between what the original was and this now really is this number.
Yeah.
Then it comes
'cause-
back here and that's when we decide what we're going to do.
Well, y'all just heard from Mark, and Mark
Right.
says there might be some other options as far as ways to build a building that might save some money. So it would behoove all of us to get that final, whatever it is, and that final set of numbers,
Right.
at least the final bid package numbers, and then we can go from there.
Tyler, would you like that door, one of those doors?
I just
shut
want,
before
I want to
you
remind
go?
everyone that Mark talked about 3 prongs to his thing. Cost was one, functionality was another, but aesthetics cannot be forgotten.
No. And
So
based-
kind of the process, we could decide on a location. I can actually talk into this. Decide on a location, then we and staff and the Staleys and everyone will start working through
Mhm,
the
okay.
actual terms of a lease and what that would look like and how it would function.
Okay.
But as we've seen every week, until we have a location, we
Okay,
can't
so-
really get to the next step.
Great.
I'm ready to
I'm
pull
ready
all
to-
kinds of triggers on location.
Yeah. I think we're ready to take that to an action meeting next week.
Yes, absolutely.
So we can get him moving and everyone else moving to some.
But I once again want to express appreciation to Mark. That professional opinion, him having been in this and having skin in the game from the very beginning, right? Being the architect for what's there and what was planned, and to hear from you was of great value.
Thank you for making it back.
Thank you
So-
for that.
Just for clarification, do we have a sense of a location so staff can start to put something together that you can have for next week? I
Well,
mean, we
that's why
talked
I
about
asked Dallin if he had a preference.
utility line relocation estimates and that type
Yeah.
of stuff,
Want to add those?
but for which location?
I believe we need to leave the gyms in the original location and move.
Well, yeah.
Do this one.
Move
So
the ice
this-
rink out to the
Yeah.
northwest corner or somewhere along that
Whatever
plane.
works the best.
We'll get estimates to move both of the blue lines that go through the parking lot.
Yeah, but
Okay. And I just think, and I think that you also kind of poo-pooed the idea of having the ice rink out here on this southwest corner, just because of the size and the immensity of that and what that does to a line of sight and the sense of entry and all of that.
Will you come back up to the microphone?
This is an accountant saying all this, it just seems like that.
yeah, you
is
need to
our-
come to the mic because I'm about to ask a question that you're going to have to respond to. Dallin, don't go away. You might want to just be right there beside him.
The original option was 3 with what we're trying to get here. Was option 3.
So looking at
Originally.
this map and those lines, I guess my question is there adequate space since, because I would concur with Councilman Isom, and I think we leave the gyms where they currently are. That's my thinking. But if the ice rink were to move to this location on the west,
Could it move further west since
Which
it's
location?
standalone anyway?
Yeah.
So we don't have to relocate those lines.
This drops off considerably.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
That's my question.
It starts to drop off. So if you wanted to keep it at the same level as the parking lot and take advantage of that, that would be difficult.
Well, then what's the cost difference between backfilling that and filling it up and relocating the lines?
Right. That's what you need to determine.
Because
So-
it's going to be a standalone anyway. So moving in another 30 or 40 or 50, whatever that is.
Right. So moving it this way would remove some of the site costs of reconfiguration of what's going on here.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing would happen here. And Dallin's preference is to give him a little bit more space to do some cool stuff out here on the north.
Right.
That would add to his summer programs and,
Right.
and everything else that he's got
Vibe.
going there. That would be difficult in this location just because of the way the site falls off.
So
And
you actually prefer the corner?
So Dallin, if we're looking
Yeah.
at trying to prepare some cost estimates for utility
I'm sure
line.
you can. Yeah.
Hold on for like 2 seconds. Okay, so if you want cost estimates, because this is what we actually are trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Is there a specific location that you would like us to cost estimate, like your top priority of the different things?
That's a tough one to just spring on me.
I know, it's a tough one to,
I'm not the construction expert, I guess is the best way to put it. From my maybe unexperienced point of view, I feel like both could be made to work, and Mark could probably help us answer that a little bit better. I think that both could be made to work, so
is there
Maybe
one you
the-
prefer more?
I would say we'd probably want to get some people that maybe know a little bit more to say maybe it's going to be $300,000 more to knock out the rock in one spot compared to the other, or to at least give us their best guess.
So
If-
just for next week, if we got cost estimates, if we ask Kit to estimate a cost to move those 2 blue lines that go through the parking lot, that would give the council a little more information. That would clear
Yeah.
whatever hurdles needed to be cleared.
Yeah, I think so.
I
And
need to have a
if we're doing
personal
that, I would
application.
maybe recommend the cost to run the sewer to maybe either or, and the cost of getting the 3-phase power to one or the other.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, if the council next week on the decision on where things are going to go, you could be as open as saying, if the gym's going where it was designed to go, we will make the rest of the Staley's already have a first refusal on the corner.
Yeah.
If you wanted to, you could say we will make arrangements to move to either west of the building or the corner, or if there's some other pot on the land you want to look at. I don't know right now if we need to pin them down and say you have to go on the corner or you have to go to the west.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it's more financially feasible to go in one spot or another, I'm sure that would be something that would play into their calculation. But why not give them the flexibility to say, yeah, we'll pick.
Are you okay with
Mhm.
that? 2
Yeah.
options and
I'm okay with it. I just want to make sure it's clear that if the location is moving, that changes probably quite a bit of stuff, especially if we start talking about changing the materials and the structure of the building and a lot of that stuff, because a lot of those things are things that we've already gone out and got commitments on donations and discounts and that kind of stuff. So,
But it's not going to change the overall size of the building, except that there's
No.
the 2 additional walls are there. And that's the
Yeah.
difference we're talking about between the facilities of being $800 or $1 million or whatever it is, $1.1 million.
and
Yeah,
we
so
want to
we-
know the all-in costs and the incremental costs.
yeah. So, yeah. And
of this move.
I guess I just got to say that we can't decrease the level of service that we can provide and still put in a certain amount of money. There's a certain minimum service level that it has to serve. There's a certain amount that we can put in and still make the cash flow work. Changing the design and the construction materials and that kind of stuff may change that in some ways, just because it may change the amount that we can reduce our thing. So if we say we change all of this stuff, now we're only able to secure $500,000 worth of donations when we thought maybe before we could have got 7 or 8, then that could change the amount that we're in for too. So I mean, it does in a way change quite a bit.
Yeah, but
What materials are you
least we'll
talking
have a
about
starting
that
point.
would change?
Yeah, this
Yeah.
will get us.
Yeah. So I just want to make it clear that we're not 100% saying that we're all in for this exact dollar figure, no matter what happens to the plan.
no, I think
That
I
it-
understand that.
That changing the plan
And I-
changes everything.
I think we all are very
Okay.
well, because we don't have I mean, every time we talk and there's a new variable, it changes some dollar amount. Even the relocation of the utilities are changing dollar amounts.
That's right.
So I think we're all, at least I would think everybody's pretty aware that we don't have solid dollar amounts on
Yeah.
any of these
Okay.
exact locations.
We wouldn't ask you guys to commit to something before you know your numbers
Yeah.
either.
Yeah, and I just wanted to make it clear that stuff could change. I mean, if we go from the flat roof to a prefab pitched roof, that could potentially take that whole donation out from GAF that we've already got. That kind of
Our
stuff.
only hope was to try to take a step forward.
Yeah.
I know you guys want to start building sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And if we keep spinning our wheels over location, we're never going to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So location is a step in the right direction. I would just hope that if we make that change, and if you're telling us to keep going forward, that we're committed to going forward, and
Well, we've got
that
to
we get
see
it
all
done.
the
So
end result of what that means, but now we can get final numbers and.
So council, so I want to so Dallin and I spoke a few times and earlier. So if staff understands council correctly, we're denying Staley Recreation the lease in the current location, and staff is to work with Staley Recreation to find a suitable location on the Lake at the Hills complex property.
Well, that will be our vote next
That will
week.
be our vote.
But as far as staff, just so that's
So is that what you
What
want?
you
We're
want
not
staff to
denying
do.
the lease for the next year, but we're denying the 20-year job.
20-year.
We're not going to do anything this week from staff,
No.
except get you some estimates to move those lines.
No, that's fine.
Once you guys vote and tell us where you want locations to be, then we'll take the next steps.
But I also want to clear that, at least in my vote, and this will probably be in my motion next week, is it's with this
Who says you get to
understanding.
move?
Well, maybe I won't make the motion for you. They'll jump right on it. Is that we're still looking at this as a combination of gymnasiums and ice rink. It is a combination still.
Correct. Absolutely.
Okay. So we're all on the same understanding.
Yeah,
I think so.
What's for next week?
She had something.
Yes, Brittany. You still have to come up to the microphone and say your name though.
It might be a dumb question, but
I'm going to be on air.
Brittany Perry, you have a middle school across the street that has 1,200 kids in it, and you're about to put a big shiny object out in front for them. Is there going to be a fence, or I'm just wondering how you're going to keep all these kids from your facility every day?
I think
After
Alan
school.
wants all those kids at his facility.
Well,
after
I
school every day.
mean, you want them to pay
You would
though.
love to have them
I'm
there to
talking
skate.
about, yeah.
Well, I think that'll have to come in the design process. That'll
Yeah,
have to come in the design
I was just saying you're gonna put a big shiny object in front of 1,200 middle schoolers, and yeah.
They'll obviously have some.
Well, that's what I was just wondering.
No, it's a good question, but that's a good point to remember in the design process.
I think they've already got that kind of nailed down. You and I talked about it. If it's out there on the back, the enclosure. So I don't know, you might can answer that question. So,
yeah, I mean, it would all be site dependent, but yeah, we would have to have a point of entry that we could control entry. So
Just looking at it, if you move, you leave the, this is going to be, if you move this building over here, these lines are not going to be affected.
Right. Right. That's why I wondered
That's
the
what I'm
difference between relocating them and making that site preparation work may be a wash. I don't know that. but that's what we'll work on and find out.
You'll have a longer sewer run.
Yeah.
Maybe for Kit, I know we've talked about this corner location a fair amount. I think that we were fairly well set that retention basin there on the east side of that dirt lot, that we'd be able to fill over that and with a culvert or something divert the
Yeah.
runoff from the parking lot. So
Yeah, that was just collecting drainage off the parking lot. And
Yeah.
I've never seen water standing in it because there's
Yeah.
the lava so
yeah.
This
right
is
there at the surface.
very
Helpful.
Okay. Are we good on this one?
Mhm.
So we'll put this on the action agenda for next week.
Yes.
very helpful.
All right. Thank you both so
Thank
much.
you
And
very
thank you,
much.
Mark, for making the trip
Thank you
and
so much.
Thanks, Dallin.
coming.
We'll put you on our
Thank you,
Christmas card
Dallin.
list.
Okay. Item number 11, consider including a no parking restriction in section 3510 of the city traffic ordinance on the southwest corner of Coal Creek Road and 300 West.
Done. Oh, did I say that
Yep.
out loud?
What did you say?
Thank you for your quick response to that.
Yes, no further questions.
Or discussion.
Hey,
I agree.
this is where we're talking right here for this no parking zone. We've tried several things on this intersection. It's kind of a funky intersection for sight lines with that angle it's got. But one thing that would help, and this was Councilman Phillips' idea, is do no parking zone just right in this section from the east edge of the driveway over to the existing stop sign. So
Oh,
that,
okay.
that's what's
So
being
there is a
proposed.
drive right there.
There's a driveway right here.
It goes right
Yeah.
into, it drives
Yeah.
into their lot.
Goes into
Yeah.
the yard, yeah.
What would be the distance? Just
It's about 80 feet.
Didn't I thought I put it in there. I think it was
80
some
feet on that
80
little-
feet, I think.
Yeah.
I think you did say 80 feet.
It's in
On
the
that little
pockets.
thing, it says 80 feet.
Okay. And that will go on the action agenda. Do you have questions related to
Only
that?
just that, do we need to speak to Sunrock? And I mean, we need to do it, but do we need to say we're doing this just so they can,
Well, they've got lots of area inside.
they got
the
lots
park.
of area.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could tell them that what we're planning on doing.
Okay.
I'll stop by and let them know.
Move to adjourn this meeting.
There a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you all.
Is that going,
Gotta decide
is that going
whether
on the
I'm driving
consent
up
then,
there
that last
now or-
item?
No, it's an ordinance. It's
Oh,
on the
yeah.
action agenda.
Okay,
A little
sorry.
bit late for you to head out. Pro can